It was just a subtle hint, seemingly harmless, and he almost overlooked it. Business had taken him out of town, and as usual, he left a detailed itinerary for his wife, Evelyn. She, in turn, kept him updated on her own schedule, a routine they'd settled into over the years. Then, on Thursday morning, everything suddenly fell into place. The deal he'd been negotiating was finalized by 11 a.m., and the clients he was working with flew off to handle an emergency at one of their East Coast operations. Landon was a personable, upbeat man, always smiling, and served as a troubleshooter and negotiator for his company. While business trips like this one weren't everyday occurrences, they were a few times a year. This particular trip was planned to last the entire week, with his return scheduled for Saturday. He had a flight out of Los Angeles at 9:15 p.m. on Saturday, landing in Seattle just past midnight. He had told Evelyn not to pick him up from SeaTac Airport, as he preferred to take the airport shuttle back home. It would drop him off at his Bellevue house by 1:30 a.m. Landon rushed to LAX and managed to change his tickets. By 1:45 p.m., he was seated on the plane. Once airborne, he used the in-flight phone to call home and let Evelyn know he would be arriving later that afternoon. But, as expected, she was at work. Not to be deterred, he flipped through his briefcase, found her office number, and dialed her workplace directly. "Reed, Lydia, and Grant, how may I help you?" The receptionist answered cheerfully. Where's Rachel?" Landon asked. Rachel was Evelyn's personal assistant, and his calls usually went straight to her desk. "Mrs. Barrett's secretary is out of the office today and tomorrow. Can I assist you with something?" came the bright response. Landon hesitated. "Well, can I speak to Mrs. Barrett then?" "Mrs. Barrett? Who should I say is calling?" The receptionist's tone shifted, now tinged with a slight nervousness. "This is her husband. Please patch me through," he requested. After a noticeable short pause, then, Mrs. Barrett is tied up at the moment, and I'm not sure when she will be available. May I leave her a message?" Landon thought for a moment. "No, I'll talk to her at home tonight. Just tell her I called," and he hung up. Something about the call didn't sit right with him, but it took another half hour of mulling it over before he could pinpoint what was off. Evelyn had told him on the phone last night that she'd be in the office all day today, so her absence was odd. Still, it was possible she could have been caught up with a legal file or a client, something that would have kept her from answering the phone. But what really didn't add up was Rachel's absence. Evelyn always made a point of having Rachel there during the same hours she worked. The only times Landon could remember Rachel not being in the office when Evelyn was there were when Rachel had been sick with the flu, or on the rare occasion when she was out for personal business. The absence of both Evelyn and her trusted assistant at the same time felt off. The plane landed on time in Seattle, and he was dropped home by 6:35 p.m. Evelyn wasn't home, and the house was dark, which was surprising. His wife was almost always home by 6 p.m. Landon unpacked, tossing his dirty linen in the hamper before changing clothes. When Evelyn wasn't home by 8 o'clock, he made himself a toasted cheese sandwich for dinner. Then he settled down in front of the TV to wait for Evelyn. With Evelyn still not home from work, he began worrying. Had she had an accident? But if something like that had happened, someone would have called the house. And if he wasn't there, at least a message would have been left. He was too restless worrying about Evelyn to sit still, and he found himself pacing the floor. He dialed her cell phone, but received the message that her number was not available. Probably, he thought, because the phone was turned off. I wonder why she would have turned it off. The hint that something was terribly askew had grown to a hot ember by 9:20 when his own cell phone rang. Picking it up, he found Evelyn on the other end. "Landon, I was beginning to wonder if something had gone wrong," were the first words rushing out of her mouth. She sounded worried. "I called your hotel as usual after eating dinner, and they told me you had checked out. Are you all right?" "Yeah, just a minor change of plans," he replied. "Where are you?" "I'm home. Just finished cleaning up the kitchen. It's been lonely around here tonight. Will you be home Sunday as scheduled? And where are you staying?" "Well, I'll be home all day Sunday, no problem. We moved our negotiations to their company headquarters this morning. You can reach me on my cell," he answered, his eyes fixed on the darkened, deserted kitchen. No wife there, and the dishes from his makeshift meal were piled in the sink. "Anything unusual come up today? I tried to get you at the office this afternoon." "Oh, well, no, nothing special. I must have been tied up with Paul Redding at the time. He got me through that mess with the Brigham account this week. I owe him big time for that," she said with a voice that seemed to have a hidden meaning in it, one which Landon couldn't fathom. "Honey, after I was able to turn that disaster around, it looks like I'm going to get that partnership. Mr. Reed practically promised it to me." Evelyn crowed. "Isn't that grand?" "Sure is, honey. We will have to celebrate. I'm sorry I wasn't there tonight to get the celebration off the ground. Don't worry about that, love. We can start our fiesta Sunday when you come home. Don't be late. I really miss you. It's going to be lonely in that big bed without you tonight. After chatting about domestic issues for a few minutes, the connection was broken. Landon sat thinking of the many lies Evelyn had thrown at him tonight, his stomach twisting, churning, a sour taste in his mouth. Until tonight he believed his marriage and their love was solid and strong. It had been something he never questioned. Now he wasn't sure. Landon went to bed late, tossing and turning for hours before finally getting to sleep, alone in the big bed Evelyn had complained about. He was awake by 7 o'clock, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as he tried to plan his day. By 9 o'clock, he knew Evelyn wasn't coming home. He called her office. When the receptionist answered instead of Rachel, he just asked if he could speak with Mrs. Barrett. When she told him Mrs. Barrett wasn't available, he thanked her, told her it wasn't a pressing problem and that he would call again Monday morning. Oh, that should be fine. We expect Mrs. Barrett in the office by 9 o'clock Monday. You can call her then, was the friendly response. After pulling information from his wife's office Rolodex, Landon climbed in their SUV. They had purchased the dark green Explorer to tow their camping trailer and seldom drove it other than on trips into the Cascade Mountains or on trips with the trailer. It was an unknown vehicle to those they knew. Leaving the Mercedes in the garage, he drove to Evelyn's Bellevue office. Driving slowly through the parking lot, he made sure Evelyn's gray BMW wasn't there. With a sinking heart, he went looking for the address he found on her Rolodex, Paul Redding's home. He found it in a wooded area in the exclusive Medina area. The grounds were surrounded with an 8-foot red brick fence and heavily shadowed with towering fir trees. As he drove slowly by, he saw Evelyn's BMW parked beside the garage where it didn't block the circular driveway. His vision suddenly blurry, he pulled to the side of the road until he could calm himself and dry his eyes. Landon drove into Bellevue, stopping for a breakfast so belated he had to call it brunch. It was 11:30 when he sat down and ordered a Belgian waffle and tea. His stomach was too upset to take coffee, and he wasn't sure if he could even eat the waffle. Eating slowly, having to force each bite to stay down, he finally finished the meal, paid for it, and left the restaurant an hour later. Driving slowly, he returned to the road past Redding's place. Evelyn's car was still there. After driving aimlessly for over an hour, he again drove by Redding's. His wife's car was still there. He drove home, his mind seething, wondering what was left of his marriage and the life he had enjoyed. He wondered if he would ever smile again. The remainder of the day was spent dawdling around the house. He couldn't face cooking a meal, quieting his occasional hunger pangs by eating snacks, fruit juices, and colas. The only break was getting another call from Evelyn on his cell phone at 9:45 as he was getting ready for bed. She complained again about how big and lonely their bed was without him in it. Landon just grunted, trying not to be surly when he told her she didn't really know how lonely such a big bed could be. Evelyn was puzzled and asked what he meant. He tossed the comment off as agreeing that the bed by herself was very, very lonely for her. He told her had loved her more than his own life just as he hung up. He finally forced himself into bed at midnight. His mind seethed. Did she love him at all? Was she trying to punish him for something? No, this wasn't about him. It had to be about her. What was wrong? What more did she need? Could he provide it? What could he do to correct it? He tossed and turned another night away, waking unrest at 8 a.m. Landon was sitting in the living room, the blinds drawn, the lights out when he heard Evelyn's BMW drive into the garage. It was almost 10 o'clock. A moment later, she came in the door from the garage to the kitchen, carrying a small overnight bag in her hand. Sitting where he was, in his oversized dark leather lounge chair, he saw her come in. She was wearing a Campbell plaid wrap-around skirt and a bright red sleeveless blouse. The top 2 buttons of the silk blouse were open. She looked fresh and relaxed as she started through the kitchen. Her tie cloisonne necklace, a gift from him on their 3rd anniversary, shimmering around her slender throat. Halfway through the room she stopped, staring at the mess in the kitchen sink. Landon hadn't bothered cleaning up his breakfast dishes, or even putting the dirty glasses in the dishwasher from the night before. The teapot on the stove, keeping the water warm, didn't escape Evelyn's notice either. Evelyn's eyes began apprehensively darting around the room. Slowly, cautiously, she warily walked through the kitchen, the only light sifting through the closed curtains. She stopped in the dining room, eyeing the drapes closed over the sliding glass doors to the patio. She examined every nook and cranny of the room before walking through. Dropping her overnight bag on a chair in the dining room, she stealthily rushed through the living room to the fireplace. Hefting the poker, she whirled to again face the room. It was then that Landon, sitting quietly in his chair, lifted his cup to his lips to take a sip of tea, calling her attention to his shadowy presence. "Oh my God, Landon. You scared me to death. When did you get home?" Evelyn demanded in a shaky voice. Landon let the silence drag on. It was only minutes but seemed much longer before he replied. His voice, normally so alive and vibrant, sounded dead. "A couple days." Evelyn's knees seemed to sag, and she stepped backward to half fall into a blue and white striped wingback chair across from her husband, her face frozen in shock. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call? Where have you been staying?" she asked. After taking another sip of tea, Landon replied in a voice devoid of all emotion. "I did call. I called Thursday afternoon. You weren't home, and you weren't in the office. Rachel wasn't there, either." Letting the silence drag out again, he took another sip of tea. "I was sitting here in my chair when you called. I spent the night in that big, lonely bed you told me about." Outside, in the warm Saturday sunlight, a car drove by. Two of the neighbor kids began a loud argument, and one of their dogs began barking loudly. In the living room, with all drapes and blinds drawn, it was dusk. The only sounds were Evelyn's strangled sobs. Taking another sip of tea, Landon continued in the same dead, flat voice. "Somehow, I don't think the bed you were in Thursday and Friday nights was all that lonely. Do you want to tell me about it, Evelyn? Can you make me understand what happened?" Evelyn was weeping openly now, her head shaking side to side, her face hidden in her hands. "Landon, I love you. This had nothing to do with you, with us. Please try to understand. This was something I felt I had to do. It had nothing to do with my love for you, with us." "That makes no sense, Evelyn. How can your cheating on me, cucking me, not have a thing to do with us? It was something I felt I had to do, Landon. I was trying to repay Paul for what he had done for me. It had nothing to do with the way I feel toward you, with my love for you." Landon sat silently, watching his wife as he sipped his tea until finally he rose to refill his cup. From the kitchen, he asked Evelyn if she wanted something. She shook her head no, not looking at him, nor did she watch as he returned to his chair. "Well, wife, tell me why you felt what you owed Redding that warranted breaking your wedding vows to me." A thought suddenly hit him. Had he blackmailed you before he gave you the help you needed on the Brigham account? No. Oh no, he wouldn't do anything like that. He is a very honorable man. What he did was only because he wanted to help me, and he knew I wasn't responsible for the mess things were in. He would never ask for something like that. He didn't expect to get anything from it. So, since he wouldn't ask, was too honorable to even suggest you break your vows, why did you volunteer? Is that I'm hearing? What am I missing? You are making this all sound so tawdry. It wasn't like that. It was something he deserved. I keep telling you, it had nothing to do with you and I, with us. Is it something I've done? Some problem with me that led to this? Evelyn almost screamed. No, I keep telling you, it had nothing to do with you. I had to do something to thank him for what he did for me. When he helped me with Brigham, he did it for both you and I. His help will benefit both of us. This wasn't for me, it was for him, and it had nothing to do with my love for you. After a moment's reflection, he slowly, painfully asked, "Since you are so upset that my description of your tryst makes it sound tawdry and slimy, does this mean it was beautiful to you?" The silence drew out again before Landon broke it. "Remember, Evelyn, how I've always told you, pledged to you, that I belong to you? And you have always told me you belong to me. Many times, you have told me you were all mine, usually without prompting. Do you recall my telling you how much I believed we belonged to one another? Do you remember that?" Landon's voice floated out flatly, with no expression, but Evelyn heard the tremble in his words. "Landon, yes, I do belong to you. This had nothing to do with you, nothing to do with us." "Oh, Evelyn, how can you say one thing, then another so contradictory? Can't you see the contradiction? You gave the one thing that was most important to me, the one thing in the whole world that I felt most proud of, yourself. You gave it to another man. And sitting here, listening to you talk, I am beginning to believe you hold intimacy with yourself of little value. You gave it to a man you say hadn't even asked for it. To hear you talk, I am beginning to think you had to beg him to take it. Then you tell me that it had nothing to do with me," he added in a soft, hopeless voice. "But it didn't mean anything, Landon. I am still all here. Nothing in me has changed. I love you totally. I am yours," sobbed Evelyn. "Evelyn, everything we experience changes us. You just returned from spending 2 nights in another man's bed." Landon had to pause here, his voice breaking. "You were doing things, intimate things with another man, things that should only be shared with someone you love." With a sob he asked, "How many nights were you with him, Evelyn? Was it only those 2? How many more were there?" After a long break when he was able to get his emotions under control, he continued. His voice now was again emotionless. And so help me, Evelyn. I can't help wondering how many other men deserve to be rewarded with what was mine. You tell me you are mine. Then you casually give yourself away. Evelyn's body was shaking with sobs now, her head shaking her denial of Landon's words. She seemed to have shrunken in on herself, her shoulders hunched, her elbows clasped inside her knees, her face buried in her hands, her hair falling over her face. The long, long moments crept on, the man sitting silently, brooding in his chair, his wife now cowering in the chair across from him. It was dim in the room, and the only sounds were those coming from the outside world. A world where the neighborhood was enjoying a quiet, sunny Saturday. Not a sound was heard inside the room other than Evelyn's sobs until the mantel clock began its muffled striking of noon. Evelyn, I don't know where we are going. I swear I love you as much now as I did Sunday, as I was leaving for Los Angeles. But I don't know where we are. You keep telling me that your betrayal has nothing to do with me. You don't understand what you have done. My trust in you is gone. And I don't know how I can get it back, what you could do to earn it back. After a moment, Landon continued, if you suggest I go out and cheat on you, that would balance the scales, we are through. First, if you have so little interest in my fidelity, it tells me how cheap you hold fidelity. Second, 2 wrongs do not make a right. 2 wrongs are twice as bad as 1. He slowly rose from his chair, set the empty teacup on the fireplace hearth, then walked to the dining room. There he drew the drapes aside to look out onto their bright, immaculate backyard. He began speaking in a voice she had to strain to hear. Evelyn, I want to shake you so hard your teeth rattle. I have never wanted to hurt a woman before, much less my wife, my love. It would be a very bad idea if I were to meet Paul Redding now, despite your implication that it was you that seduced him. Evelyn made a small sound, maybe denying she had seduced Paul. Landon continued, you tell me this was not his idea, just to toss another little problem at you. Now that he has tasted your fruits, given to him with no effort on his part, isn't he going to expect those fruits will be available to him later? No matter what you explain to him, he now has to consider you easy. Evelyn's protest was cut short when he spoke over her words. Maybe he won't think you are available for anyone, but he will believe you are available to him. To him, you are easy. Over time, he is going to lose a lot of respect and value for you. Wife, if we want somehow to make this marriage work, we are going to have to face this. Hour by hour, day to day, week by week, in this house, as we try to reopen communication. Taking a long breath, he continued, almost whispering, I don't know if it can be done. I do know we can make no decisions today. It will be months, maybe years before we can again be truly comfortable with one another. For tonight, I'll sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow we will replace our king-sized bed with a full-size bed for each of us. The master bedroom is large enough. Somehow, if we work hard at it, we may be able to get through this. If we both want to make it work. At the moment I wonder if you do. For now, this is the best I can do. Turning to look back into the living room, it was like looking into a dark cave after looking outside into their sunny backyard. I'm willing to try. We can talk about what marriage means to each of us over the coming months. Maybe we can save this. Evelyn, I love you. Sliding the glass doors open to the patio, he stepped outside. As he slid the door closed, he heard his wife's sobs. 8 months after Landon Barrett had walked out onto that patio, he sat in an upscale Portland restaurant on a Friday evening. He was going to dine with a man he had been making miserable for several months. The strains of the breakup of his marriage had soured Landon on his firm. In the middle of his crisis with Evelyn, on the next day after the confrontation, they called and insisted that he fly off on another troubleshooting task. He had told them he had serious family problems and could not leave. They had pressured him, suggesting there was a vice presidency for the man who saved their bacon. He said that was not as important to him as his marriage, shaky though it might be. They had thrown in the name of Eddie Rivera, supposedly his chief rival. If Landon would not go, Eddie would, and would reap the rewards for success. Despite the seriousness of his personal crisis, Landon had unable to resist laughing out loud. He had been on the phone talking to the CEO of his firm at the time. Then he got serious. Carlton, you go ahead and send Eddie Rivera, with my blessing. Maybe Eddie will amaze us all and rise to the occasion. If he does, make him your VP. Maybe he will rise to the challenge of that level, too. Maybe miracles will happen. Maybe the Peter principle doesn't apply to your firm. And maybe the Great Pumpkin will come on Halloween and reward all the good little boys and girls. But I'll tell you what, Carlton, whatever wonders do happen, I won't be there. All these petty pressure tactics sicken me. Watch for my next and last email, just to put it in writing. I hereby resign. Give my best to Eddie. He had indeed resigned, and was the marketing director and chief troubleshooter for another firm now. Fin Systems Incorporated. Fin's direct and most prominent competitor was Chapman Electronics. He had chosen to go with Fin for that very reason. He had become such a gadfly that Mr. Victor Chapman, president of Chapman Electronics, was meeting him. Landon had outmaneuvered Chapman Electronics and had been poaching clients left and right, to the point that Victor Chapman, their president, desperately wanted to get Landon Barrett out of the competition by hiring him away. Landon had been working toward that end for almost 7 months. He expected that Victor Chapman was planning to use this dinner to make him an offer. He didn't think that it was going to work out quite the way that Chapman did. Oh yes, he would consider jumping over to Chapman for a price. But would Victor Chapman be willing to pay the high price that Landon had in mind? Chapman came in, apologizing for his tardiness. He was a bit wary and tentative as he sized up Landon Barrett. Landon, on the other hand, was relaxed. He knew a great deal about Chapman Electronics and Victor Chapman. He also knew a great deal about Marjorie Chapman, Victor's attractive wife. Marjorie Chapman, the attorney. Marjorie Chapman, Evelyn Barrett's mentor at the law firm of Reed, Lydia, and Grant. The two men shook hands and went about the business of ordering and eating a meal. They were careful to stay away from the reason for the meeting as they ate, so they made small talk about local politics and sports teams in the unusually dry weather. After they ate, Mr. Chapman waited for the dishes to be cleared and then got to the point. Let's not beat around the bush, Barrett. Since you've been with Finn, you've been killing us. We have always had our problems, and you have feasted on them. You've been bird-dogging damn near every single one of our clients and underbidding us. Frankly, you have hurt us. I've had to lay off staff and am thinking about closing up one facility. I've finally come to the realization that the only way I can get you to stop bleeding us dry is to hire you away from Finn and bring you onto my team. I need you to help me improve where we are weak. Unless you have some special tie to Finn, I assume that you are motivated by ambition like anyone else. I want to make you my VP for marketing and business development. You'd be my number 2 man. Let me know your price. I just can't afford to have you against me anymore. You'll put me out of business. Landon took a sip of his wine. Victor, I'll be happy to discuss your offer and the things that I think I can bring to Chapman. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table to the older men. This spells out what I want in the way of compensation and authority. I don't think there's anything in there that will surprise you or put you off. However, my price includes something that is not in this envelope. It's a simple thing, really. Victor mentally braced himself. I want you to listen to a story. I want your word that you will hear me out all the way through to the end and that you will not interrupt. Victor was mystified, but willing to do almost anything to hire Landon Barrett. He gave his word and settled back in his chair. Landon Barrett walked to the edge of the patio, out to where he could just see the waters of Lake Washington through the trees. His mind was racing at 10,000 RPM, or so it seemed. Before he walked out, he had been grasping at straws, trying to come to grips with the crisis that Evelyn had brought home. He had been thinking and talking off the top of his head. Evelyn was a sobbing, unresponsive mess, unable or unwilling to answer him or explain herself in any way that made sense. So he had taken the lead. As a troubleshooter and negotiator, that was the way he worked when a situation was fluid and difficult. Come up with workarounds, stopgaps, get things organized, get things moving. Action, any action is better than inaction. Any plan, however sketchy, is better than no plan. Afterward, there would be time for course corrections and longer-term solutions. He had just told Evelyn that they could face this problem together, in this house, as long as she was willing to work with him, that they could try to reopen communication, that they would sleep apart for now. He had automatically treated it as if it were a business problem. Now, not 10 minutes later, he was having second thoughts. This was not a company that had a cash flow shortfall or a distribution glitch or a public relations problem. This was his marriage. Their marriage, and Evelyn had dealt it a catastrophic blow. Their entire relationship had been based on faith and trust. She had broken that faith and given up any claim to his trust. And she didn't seem to have the slightest understanding of what she had done. A brilliant, intuitive woman, and yet all of her feeble explanations and repeated protestations of love rang hollow and phony. One of the last things he had said to her was, "Somehow, if we work hard at it, we may be able to get through this. If we both want to make it work. At the moment, I wonder if you do." And that last was the crux of it. He had ended by saying, "Evelyn, I love you." And that was true. But nothing, not even his love for her, was infinite. And each lie that she had effortlessly thrown in his face these past several days had chipped away at that love in some small, incremental way. The crushing sexual betrayal in her actions and evasions had broken away large chunks, and he could only wonder how many other lies and betrayals there might be, ones that he had not yet caught her in. Having to consider that they might exist eroded his love even more. He was no lawyer, but he recalled that lawyers often told juries they were entitled to apply an old legal principle to any witness. False in one thing, false in all things. If jurors determined that a witness was untruthful in one material statement, they were justified in dismissing the witness's entire testimony. Evelyn had been false in so many things. He felt deeply dishonored and shocked by Evelyn's deceptions and betrayals, and even more distressed that she did not seem to understand what she had done. She had wronged him and lied to him and torn a huge hole in their marriage, and she didn't seem to comprehend that. She had given her body to another man, freely, and all she could say to explain herself was that it didn't mean anything, that it had nothing to do with Landon or their marriage. Worse yet, she'd said that it was something that she had felt that she had to do. She had felt that she had to spread her legs for another man, and could not give him a coherent reason for such a betrayal. How could they possibly get through this crisis if she would not acknowledge that what she had done was inherently wrong? She seemed completely blinded to the enormity of her mistake. Oh, just now she was overwhelmed at having been caught out and pressed for explanations that she did not have. Right now she was wounded and sobbing, and all fallen apart. But as far as he could tell, she didn't think that she had done anything wrong. She had not said she was sorry or shown the slightest remorse. He knew Evelyn, or he thought that he knew her. Obviously not as well as he had once thought, but well enough to know that she would pull herself together. She would regroup. She was, after all, a lawyer, ambitious, and highly competitive. In the face of adversity, she would do whatever it took to overcome all obstacles. She had once told him that her goal at Reed, Lydia, and Grant was to be the youngest women to ever make partner. She had a formidable reputation as a courtroom and boardroom warrior, and that part of her would emerge. And if she could not defend herself, she would go on the offensive. And in that mode, she would concede nothing, apologize for nothing, and delay, distract, avoid. It was a brilliant mode for a litigator and counsel. It would be a devastatingly bad choice of action for her, at this time, in this crisis. Landon was not a jury to be swayed. He was her husband and had been wronged. And until he understood the why of it, and knew that she understood how badly she had wronged him, they were finished. Until he knew that she felt sincere remorse, he would never accept being a cuck. He would turn his back on everything that they had shared and walk away. And so far, he had seen no understanding of her offense and no remorse. All he had seen was an unreal belief that what she had done was somehow right. He had been obliquely watching her through the undraped window. After some time, he saw her begin to get control of herself and try to get a handle on her situation. She went to the kitchen and blotted her face with wet paper towel. Then she walked around inside their house, pulling back the rest of the drapes and curtains, opening up the inside of the house to the strong, just past noon sunlight. Then she sat down again and looked out at him, squinting against the light. He imagined her trying to see what he was doing, or possibly divine what he was thinking. There were no more tears now, merely a look of purpose. He knew she was beginning to change herself into her litigator mode. He could see it in the set of her face. He knew her mind would be going over every word that had been exchanged between them from 9:20 p.m. on Thursday evening up to now. From 9:20 p.m. Thursday on, because that was when he would first have known she was lying. She would be looking at everything said, every fact, looking for loopholes in what he knew or what she thought he knew. Looking for any angle of defense, any edge. Landon's transitional glasses had long since darkened from the light, and he knew she could not see his eyes. He was sitting at an angle as if he were looking out toward the lake, but his eyes were sideways, fixed on her. His heart was sinking as she sat, planning her next move. Evelyn, 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 he despaired. Your next move has to be to admit you were wrong. We can get into the hows and whys of it after that, but you have to concede that you have wronged me and jeopardized us. And he knew, hope fading, that Evelyn would not do that. And another small piece of his love slowly chipped off and fell away. She picked up the cordless phone. Then she darted a sudden glance outside, realizing that he might be watching her. She got up and walked into the dining room and out of his sight. Landon got up and went to the patio phone. It was shielded against the elements and off to the side, out of sight of the big picture windows. If Evelyn were to walk back into the living room, she would not be able to see him. He picked it up and didn't hear a dial tone or dialing, which meant that she had not yet pushed the phone on button. He could envision Evelyn taking a moment, thinking, planning what she had to say to whomever she was about to call. Probably Paul Redding, her recent lover. Still, whatever had delayed her was a break for him. He quickly unscrewed the mouthpiece and ripped the small microphone from its soldered connections. She and her confidant, whoever it would be, would hear no noises. He took out his cell phone. It was an expensive high-end model, and he had chosen it for features that most phones did not yet have. At last, he heard her come on the line and the rapid-fire beeped notes of a speed dial number. Landon switched his cell phone to record memo mode and held it against the earpiece. It would record about 8 or 9 minutes of audio. The phone rang a couple of times. Then it picked up and a man said, "Evelyn, did you leave something?" Evelyn's voice overrode the man's. "Paul, stop talking. Listen to me. We are in deep trouble. My marriage is going up in flames, and I'm about to lose the only man that I have ever loved." Landon heard a gasping sound from the other end. He had always wondered what one of those sounded like. Now he knew. "Landon was here when I came home this morning. He's been home since Thursday." "What? Shit. You said he..." "Shut up and listen, Paul. He knows. Or is pretty certain. He was here Thursday night and last night. You heard those phone conversations we had, where I bullshitted about cleaning up the kitchen and complained about having to sleep in the big old cold lonely bed? Well, he was here, looking at that kitchen and later sleeping in that bed. He listened to me lie in 2 calls over 2 days and never let on that he knew they were lies. God, when he said something offhand about knowing how lonely such a big bed could be, I thought there was something odd in his tone, but I didn't pick up on it. The damage was done by then, only I didn't know it. The last thing he said last night was that he had loved me more than his own life. I should have heard that past tense and reacted to it, but you were having sex with me and I wasn't thinking clearly." There was dead silence. Landon could barely keep his knees from collapsing. He could not have spoken if he had 10 microphones before his lips. He wondered how his heart could keep on beating after what he had just heard. But it did. Paul said, "Evelyn, I don't understand. If he's that quick, how could he not have said something if he knew you were lying? I'd have been screaming accusations." Paul, Landon is a negotiator. He troubleshoots problems for his company. Almost every day, he sits across the table from people who lie with a straight face, and he reads their lies in their faces and their voices. He doesn't react. He has trained himself not to react. He builds his case and ties up their lies in a bundle and later makes them swallow it. He's ruthless behind that pleasant smiling face. Christ. I thought we were being so careful, Evelyn. What did he say when you came in this morning? That he knew I was lying about being home those nights, and that he didn't think that the bed I was in Thursday and Friday night was all that lonely. Then he asked me to explain myself. Paul, I was stunned. This was my worst nightmare. All could do was keep babbling that I loved him and only him, and that what I had done had nothing to do with him or us or how much I loved him. I said it was just something I had to do. I said that I had to repay you, and that what I did was something that I felt I owed you, and that you deserved for helping me with Brigham. I knew how weak and stupid it sounded even as I said it, but I simply wasn't prepared. I couldn't tell him it was advance payment for, Christ. Paul groaned. He asked me to explain how betraying him and our marriage and cucking him had nothing to do with him and didn't affect us. There was more silence. Evelyn, this is very important. Did you outright admit that we had sex? No, not specifically. But I didn't deny it when he assumed that I had. In his own words, he called it betraying him and cucking him. I repeated that I did what I did to repay you for what you did for me. It's hard to think that he wouldn't take that as an admission that we had sex. Paul was muttering something indecipherable. Then, does he know who you were with? I said the name Paul. I'm certain that I never said your last name. But Thursday night when he was wondering why he couldn't get me at the office that day, I said I was tied up with you during the day. I know I said Paul Redding then. Today he asked me exactly what I felt I owed Redding that warranted breaking my wedding vows. Shit. I thought he might not be able to connect it to me. Why? What difference does it make? Jesus, Evelyn. I've seen Landon. He's got that friendly sunny smile look on his face, but anyone who looks closer can see he's intense down underneath. He's a dangerous man. And now he knows I'm the man who cucked him. That's what you said he called it. Cucking? That's a very old-fashioned word, and it reeks of retaliation. Evelyn, is he violent? How would I know, Paul? I know he has a box full of military medals and ribbons in his dresser, but I don't know what he did to get them. I've never seen him really angry in our whole time together. But before this whole thing started, I'd never cheated on him, either. That's how he'll see this, cheating. If there's anything that might make him violent, it's betrayal. And he doesn't even know about Scott, yet. That'll be twice I've betrayed him as he will see it. I don't know what he will do. God, Paul said, I have to get the other partners in on this. We need a plan to deal with him. There was silence except for Evelyn's ragged breathing. Listen, Evelyn, you say he's a negotiator. Maybe he will be open to negotiation on this. No matter how personal it feels, ultimately this is civil law 101. You get hurt. The law uses money to make you whole. Every hurt can be salved or smoothed out somewhat with enough money. It's what tort law works with. Maybe if we can get him to sit down and talk to us, maybe we can work something out, maybe reason with him. What? Sit down with the two of us? The two adulterers? Are you insane, Paul? No. I mean with the whole partnership. Boardroom setting. Neutral ground. Scott and Marjorie and the others with serious game faces on. Cooler heads. As long as he doesn't find out about you and Scott. I don't know, Paul. I could see how furious he was getting as I tried to explain and rationalize. He holds it in with me. I don't think he would ever hurt me. But he is going to get angrier and angrier as he chews on this. Jesus, Evelyn. This has to be the worst thing that's ever faced the partners. I have to get them involved. Evelyn, where is he now and what's his mood? What has he said about the two of you? Any ultimatums? Any decisions? He went outside. To get some air, I guess, and to think. He said we would not sleep together tonight, or at least for now. That he wanted to see if we could work things out. But then he said something about doubting that I wanted to. That means he wants me to tell him everything. And you know that I can't. He'd never accept or understand our partnership fast-track system. This scares me, Paul. I'm terrified of losing him. Screw the partnership and screw the firm, but I cannot lose Landon. He's my life. Paul, this is all blowing up on me. This is your partner fast-track system, and you assured me that it would never hurt my marriage. Well, listen, Evelyn. I mean, there can never be guarantees. Bullshit, Paul. Now you listen and listen hard, because I'm not going to lose everything without retribution. I taped the conversations when you and Marjorie explained the arrangement and made the partnership offer. I have her assurances on the record, and your voice was on there too. Taped? Evelyn, that's unethical. Unethical? So is requiring prospective partners to screw their bosses, Paul. You didn't worry about ethics when you set this little system up. You hire beautiful brainy associates, and after the best of them show their mettle, you offer them the deal. A partnership in exchange for a few days with each interested partner, and that's it. A rite of passage, you called it. Evelyn, I'm sorry. This has never gone bad like this, ever. We've had associates who turned down the arrangement, but we always helped them transition out of the firm and into another one. We bought their silence. Or if we couldn't buy them off, we threatened their careers. No one's spouse ever found out before. Look, Paul's voice said, let's look at damage containment. You say you didn't really admit to having sex? What exactly did you admit to? I told you. Nothing specific. Just that I did what I did to thank you. What I did was unspecified. So you didn't say what we did. You didn't say that we had sex? No, not specifically. But Landon knows me, Paul. He knows how I get. He'll know it was everything. If I gave in, I'd have given it all. Maybe not. I have an idea, Evelyn. We'll make something up. Something that is borderline cheating, but not real intercourse. Something Clinton-esque. We need to buy time to get the partners in on this. We'll say that I'm in mourning for my wife. That she died of cancer last year. That you and I worked together for a long, brutal stretch on Brigham, and afterwards we celebrated with the whole team. Lots of relief and lots of booze and lots of happy feelings. And then it was just us, you and me. So I was depressed about going home to my cold, empty house, and your maternal instincts kicked in and you offered to stay with me for a while the one night, just to keep me company. Nothing sexual was intended, just companionship. But when we were together, I said that I was just so envious of you and Landon and your happiness. You were trying to comfort me, and we wind up sitting together, closer and closer, cuddling. And we were drinking some more, after a lot of drinking at the little celebration. Then you got worried that you hadn't heard from Landon, and you took out your cell phone and called the hotel and found that he'd checked out. You were worried and feeling a little guilty that you're here with me, even though it's innocent. So you called him on his cell, and when he asked you where you are, you told a little white lie to avoid any misunderstanding or difficult questions. So, you elaborated on the lie about cleaning up the kitchen and how lonely you were. It didn't seem all that big a deal, and you were pretty tired and blitzed. If you told the truth, that you were at my house, alone with me, you figure he'd have blown up. When you hung up, you were depressed yourself, because of the lies. So then we were comforting each other. We talked and drank some more, sitting side by side. We got close and started to cuddle, and that led to kissing, and the situation just escalated. That's all we did, fondling. It was done, and we both were upset and feeling guilty and depressed, and there was no more harm done by staying together another day and keeping on with it. It was just for the 2 days, and no real sex happened. And it was over. That's our story. What do you think? I don't know, Paul. It's bad, but not as bad as the reality. Landon will be furious. He's furious now, but I think, well, maybe this is manageable. And I think we can get over it and through it. He loves me and I love him. Hell, I'll subjugate myself and wear sackcloth if that's what it takes. But Paul, it's shaky. We can stick to it, but Landon's not stupid. He might check into the wife's story and find she's alive and well and in Europe. Then I'm dead. It's over. If we're caught lying about it, he won't accept that it wasn't sexual. He'll walk out and file a petition for dissolution. He won't quibble over the equal division of property. He just won't care. And I can't contest it. 3 months after the filing, I'll be divorced. Evelyn, no, it won't ever get to that. I told you all we need is some time to get the partners in on the damage control. First thing, you tell him that you'll tell him the whole story, but you need a day to pull yourself together. That gives us a day to get the partners on board. I'll call Marjorie and Scott, and we'll have everyone at my place tomorrow, and we'll figure how to handle this. If they agree with my strategy, you'll tell him the cover story and explain what happened and how you were kind of guilty, but really didn't go all the way, and that's why you lied about where you were. So he'll be mad, of course, and you'll have to eat crow for a while, but it'll all blow over. He really loves you, and that'll keep him from doing anything drastic. I'll make myself scarce, in case he wants to come looking for a piece of me. So then when he's cooled down a little, we'll set up a meeting with you and the partners. I'll have to sit that one out, of course. Then we'll offer him a buy-off to assuage his feelings, to show we are sorry. Paul, I hope and wish it'll work, but I have a hard time seeing Landon being bought off. Evelyn sounded dubious. Trust me, Evelyn. We'll put it that the firm was at fault for letting something like this happen, due to a project. You know, proximity, lack of people around as a buffer, and all that. We'll say we want to make it up to the two of you. Don't worry, Evelyn, everyone has a price. He loves you very much, and he'll want to avoid any scandal. And what we supposedly did is bad, no question, but it's not as if there was any intercourse. Fooling around is one thing, but it's intercourse that would be the biggie. The partners will back us in this, big time. They have a lot at stake. No law firm can afford a sex scandal. They said their goodbyes and broke the connection. As that phone conversation unfolded, Landon knew that his marriage was over. He knew what Evelyn had done and how she had lied to him and how she was going to continue to lie. The pieces were falling out of his love in bigger and bigger chunks now. In their places were growing voids filled with the dark matter of anger, pain, and mistrust. He walked a long, slow loop around the neighborhood. It was so unthinkable. A system of sexual harassment that was willingly entered into because the reward was supposedly so great. A law firm partnership, as if that was the be-all and Evelyn had been a willing participant. No, an eager one. Others had been approached and had turned it down. Not Evelyn Barrett, the woman who wanted to be the youngest partner at Reed, Lydia, and Grant. When he came back to the house, Evelyn said she needed a day to compose herself. Then she would explain. Landon could barely control himself, but grimly nodded. Playing out the scenario, he thought. He went up their bedroom and packed a bag. I'm sleeping elsewhere tonight, he told her. You know where this is going, Evelyn? As he climbed into his Mercedes, he caught a glimpse of her wan, frightened face as she stood in the doorway and watched him leave. Once in his hotel room, Landon checked his cell phone's electronic memo pad to see how much it had recorded. It only could hold about 8 or 9 minutes, but that included the remarks about the admission of sex. It also contained the essence of the partnership fast-track system. The only grounds recognized in Washington state for divorce was that a marriage was irretrievably broken. Evidence of serial adultery with multiple partners was ample proof of that, he grimly concluded. And a whopping lawsuit for revenge, too. He didn't know what charges he could file under, but he'd leave that to his lawyer. The partners meet that day at Paul's house, and Evelyn sat in. They rejected the lesser sexual dalliance idea. That would make Landon too angry. Instead, Marjorie Chapman concocted a safer, blander story of a secret government project involving legal analysis. It arose from the work on Brigham and had a short fuse deadline that kept them away for the 2 days. They and a few others were sequestered in a hotel some miles to the south. They all drove there in their own cars so they could all drive back to their homes when it was over. They knew that they had to make the story consistent, so they storyboarded it from beginning to end. They used large poster boards and set down the timeline scenario of the cell phone calls and what had been said at each time. They followed up on what Evelyn had said to Landon when she came home and he confronted her. The cover story was built around what she had said. Evelyn had called Thursday and Friday night on her cell, so Landon couldn't know where she was calling from. The story went that Evelyn and a few others were working with Paul to save him because he had saved hers on Brigham. That was the repayment, what she owed him. Evelyn was unable to explain in the evening phone calls because it was a government job and had to be kept a secret. So Evelyn had to tell some white lies to keep Landon out of it. So we didn't do anything sexual? Evelyn asked. No, you just worked round the clock. Hush hush, Marjorie Chapman said. You were promised the partnership for coming through on that. We'll say. You say that Landon knows how ambitious you are. But it had to be kept secret. That's why all the subterfuge. And when you came home, you didn't have a cover story because you never were supposed to encounter Landon home so soon. But you knew you were supposed to keep it secret. A secret government project. The weak point was that Landon had accused her of sexual misbehavior, and she had not denied it. Specifically, he had said, "How can you cheating on me, cucking me, not have a thing to do with us? Tell me why you felt what you owed Redding that warranted breaking your wedding vows to me," he demanded, his voice tight with frustration. Evelyn had responded quickly, almost defensively. You're making this all sound so tawdry. It wasn't like that. It was something he deserved. I keep telling you, it had nothing to do with you and I. With us, Landon had said. Since you are so upset that my description of your tryst makes it sound tawdry and slimy, does this mean it was beautiful to you? Oh, Evelyn, how can you say one thing, then another so contradictory? Can't you see the contradiction? You gave the one thing that was most important to me, the one thing in the whole world that I felt most proud of, yourself. You gave it to another man. And sitting here, listening to you talk, I am beginning to believe you hold intimacy with yourself of little value. You gave it to a man you say hadn't even asked for it. To hear you talk, I am beginning to think you had to beg him to take it. You just returned from spending 2 nights in another man's bed. You were doing things, intimate things with another man, things that should only be shared with someone you love. How many nights were you with him, Evelyn? Was it only those 2? How many more were there? And so help me, Evelyn. I can't help wondering how many other men deserve to be rewarded with what was mine. You tell me you are mine. Then you casually give yourself away. If you suggest I go out and cheat on you, that would balance the scales, we are through. First, if you have so little interest in my fidelity, it tells me how cheap you hold fidelity. Second, 2 wrongs do not make a right. 2 wrongs are twice as bad as 1. Those were difficult things to explain away. She had never contested his presumptions or denied his accusations. The tough question was, why hadn't she? They brought in a well-known popular psychologist, Dr. Lillian Crane. This woman had been accused of plagiarizing portions of her most recent bestseller. Read, Lydia had successfully defended her. She was extremely grateful. They went over the salient points with her, and she came up with a different scenario. Based on her insights and counsel, the group decided on a variant of the secret project cover story. Dr. Crane's emphasis was on Evelyn's state of mind. She had been worn out and weakened by the strain of the 2 difficult projects back to back. She had been drawing close to a breaking point. In this scenario, her lack of denials was explainable by her psychological state. Thus weakened, she had been so shocked at the whole thrust of Landon's initial attack that she had frozen and locked up. She literally did not hear most of what he had said and accused her of. All she could think of to say was that she had been involved in helping Paul out of gratitude and that she loved Landon. That this was her work and it had nothing to do with him or her love for him. In essence, everything that she had said that morning amounted to variations of that. The psychologist kept stressing one key point, that Evelyn had never actually heard Landon's specific allegations. She had not heard what he had said about the cheating and cucking and the tryst and spending nights in another man's bed. She had been emotionally frozen and blocking all that out. She had been in that locked-up zone. She had not understood the specifics. That was why she had never refuted or countered them. So, when she said that it wasn't tawdry, she hadn't really heard what he had charged. Dr. Crane would be prepared to testify to the likelihood of that frozen state scenario as a friendly witness in any meeting or hearing. She assured them that there was ample scientific literature that she could cite to support the scenario. The rest of the day they went over and over the key elements, prepping Evelyn on every possible aspect and angle of attack that she might anticipate from Landon. The main thing that they had going for them was that Landon had no tangible information. He knew nothing of what had really happened. He had suspicions and had said them, but she hadn't ever comprehended them so as to refute them. Evelyn began to think that she had a chance of pulling it off. She said she liked that better than having to admit she jerked Paul off and let him frig her. That was the story Evelyn planned to tell Landon the next day. The partners, and she had fleshed it out and made it sound plausible. Any of them, if questioned, would back it up, as would the psychologist. The hotel manager would back it up for such good clients. It was foolproof. They also told Evelyn that under the circumstances, she would be made partner with no further hurdles or tests to meet. When Landon came back Sunday night, Evelyn asked him to sit with her at the kitchen table. She said she was ready to tell him everything, the whole truth. He reached across and took her hands in his. His eyes bored into hers. Evelyn, before you say a word, you must understand something. If you tell me the truth, I will work with you and go to counseling and do everything in my power to get past this and stay together with you. But I must have the truth, however sordid it is. I will accept no lies, no evasions, no lawyerly ploys. Assume that I already know everything. Your job is to tell me, to confirm what I already know. Because perhaps I do. This is like the courtroom oath. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Anything less than that, and we cease to exist as a married couple. Do you understand me? Do you understand that this makes or breaks our marriage? Evelyn had sat down confident. Now she was a bit frightened. She had never seen Landon looking so grim, but she knew she was armed with a foolproof story. She told him about the secret project and how she had pitched in to repay Paul for all his help on Brigham. I owed him big time for all the help he gave me, she said. Landon sat, his face impassive. He nodded for her to go on. She told him of the hotel where they had camped out to do the work. It was about 25 miles southeast of Bellevue, far enough that we could get away from the office, she said. He asked how they had gotten there, and she said, we drove, of course. Anyone carpool? He asked, seemingly irrelevantly. No, she said. When we were done, I wanted to be able to rush home, but I was sworn to keep quiet about the project, and when I called those nights, looking for you, that's why I lied about being home. So, I had egg on my face when I came in, and you told me you'd been there all along. And this started on Thursday? Landon asked. Yes, right after we wrapped up Brigham. We all grabbed some casual clothes from home and met there in the afternoon. And you drove out there and stayed there from Thursday through Saturday morning? Yes. Landon stared at her with no expression on his face. It was his negotiator's facade. Evelyn, I drove by Paul Redding's house Friday, 3 times spaced over 4 hours. Your car was parked there by his garage. I could see his car inside the garage. I took pictures with my cell phone. He took out the prints, each time and date stamped. One at 10:43, the next at a little after 1 p.m. Your cars are still there. The third is at 2:55. Still there. You and he were there alone in his house, not miles away with other team members at a hotel. Evelyn sat very still, unable to speak. Landon stood up and paced. He took out his cell phone and dialed a number. Mrs. Beller? Landon Barrett. Here. You said I could call you at home? Yes, well, I'll take that apartment. When can I get the keys? Tomorrow? Fine. I'll be there sometime in the afternoon. He dialed another number. This message is for Mrs. Dunn. Landon Barrett confirming that appointment for 9 a.m. Monday. You can reach me on my cell phone if you need me. He looked down at his silent wife. And that is the end of us, Evelyn. I'll take some stuff with me and get the rest during the week. I told you that nothing but the truth had a chance of saving us. You chose to lie. Mrs. Catherine Dunn is my attorney for this. Don't try to call me. Communicate through her. She's in the book. He went up to their bedroom and nearly 15 minutes later came down with a couple of packed suitcases. He placed them by the door and went into the den for his laptop. For once, Evelyn could not find anything to say. She simply watched him as he passed through the room. When he came out, he said, Evelyn, I loved you. I would have done anything for you. I would have given up my life for you. You couldn't even stop lying for 1 hour for me. Goodbye, Evelyn. I hope the partnership was worth it. So that's my story, Mr. Chapman, Landon concluded. And it's not yet finished. Victor Chapman, as agreed, had sat quietly and listened throughout Landon's recounting. But he was seething. He took a sip from his water glass. Barrett, I'm sure that you know that Marjorie Chapman, whom you mentioned several times in your story, is my wife. She is a partner at Reed, Lydia, and Grant. Yes. What the hell do you mean by telling me a load of shit like that? I've met Evelyn Barrett at their social events. She made partner last year. So, she's your ex-wife? No, she's still my wife. Technically, Landon said. We split up over her adultery with the male partners, or with the 2 of them I know about. Any adulterous partner past the first 2 is overkill, legally speaking. Neither one of us has gotten around to filing for dissolution, so far. It isn't important. Chapman got up, his face deeply red from anger. You've accused my wife of being party to adultery and a participant in a scheme of sexual harassment. You've accused her of immoral, illegal, and unethical conduct. Barrett, if I were a younger man, I'd kick your butt from here to the street for saying shit like that about my wife. You can forget about any job offer. He grabbed his cane and stalked away. Landon watched him walk away. Victor Chapman almost got to the door and then stopped. He stood there, leaning on his cane for a long time, staring out through the glass doorway. Landon topped off his wineglass and refilled Chapman's. Chapman abruptly turned and came back. He stared down at Landon Barrett, who met his gaze with his negotiator's face. Then Victor Chapman slumped back down in his chair and took a swallow of the wine. I don't get it, Barrett. You're not some kind of nut. You have a good reputation. Why would you get me down here, obviously under false pretenses, and tell me a load of crap like that? Why? Barrett took a sip of his wine. A load of crap? Okay. Tell me, what's untrue in my story, Victor? I have evidence for almost everything I said. I was married to Evelyn Barrett. She did want to make partner. We did split up over how she was going about making partner, by having sex with the male partners. Your wife is her mentor. Yes, but you said all that crap about having to screw the partners to make partner. My wife never did that. Really? Well, I would have said the same about Evelyn until I found solid evidence that it was true. I wonder what Marjorie would say if you asked her to tell you the truth about that. You're Catholics, aren't you? Would she go to church with you and swear in front of the altar that my story is bullshit? I wonder. Just something to think about, Victor. You see, this is what the past 7 months have been about. I want something from your wife. If I asked her for it, she'd laugh in my face. I tried several times to see her, but she refused. She said she'd get a restraining order if I persisted. So I decided I would set things up so that you would ask her for me. I'm sorry we won't be able to work together, Victor. Right now, you're easy to beat, because you have so many inefficiencies that you can't compete. If you had hired me, I would have brought you guys into the 21st century, and you'd be hard to compete against. Thanks for the dinner. Later that night, his cell phone rang. It was past midnight, but Landon was still up. He had trouble sleeping, despite his efforts to get over it, including a very unsatisfactory course of counseling and analysis. He was still too tormented over the loss of the love of his life to be able to have an untroubled night. Mr. Barrett, this is Marjorie Chapman. I am sitting in my car in front of your apartment building because I don't know what else to do. An hour ago, I would have run you down if you were crossing the street in front of me. You have turned my life into a living nightmare. Now I think you may be my only hope. May I come up? He buzzed her in. He remembered her from the office parties. A tall, stately, beautiful woman. Quite a contrast to the small, slender Victor Chapman. But it was obvious then that they were a couple who were still very much in love after many years together. Now she was disheveled, her hair flying around her face, and her face streaked with dried tears and smeared makeup. Landon knew the look. It had been the last memory he had of Evelyn's face. He made coffee, which she accepted. She sat in an armchair opposite his. Mr. Barrett, I have been driving the streets aimlessly for over an hour. I had been worried since he had told me whom he was going to see tonight. Your name had been thrown around for the past months, and I was concerned about what you were doing and why. But I couldn't say anything to Victor. What could I say about what I knew about you that wouldn't invite further question? You had tried those several times to meet with me, and I had always refused you. I even threatened you with a protective order. Landon nodded. Well, when Victor came home from meeting you, he was obviously troubled and agitated. When I asked him what was wrong, he turned on me. He demanded to know if I had prostituted myself to make partner at Reed, Lydia, and Grant. I denied it. I looked at his face, and my first thought was one of bewilderment. I thought, how can he not believe me? When have I ever lied to him? And came the epiphany. When have I ever lied to him? Every day for the past 17 years. Every day from the day when I came home and did not say that I had sex with Scott Reed to become a partner. Every day when I did not say that I had sex with Paul Redding to become a partner. Every day when I did not say that I had sex with the other 3 willing male partners to become a partner. Lies by omission. Lies when I let him think that I had always been faithful. And God help me, every day when I did not tell him about the times. I consented to be screwed by the 2 handsome young male associates who wanted to become partners. And as I thought of all of those lies, Victor was reading my deceit in my face. He told me the story you told him about you and Evelyn. I'd heard her version after you left her. Of course, neither she nor I knew then that you'd overheard her phone conversation with Paul Redding. When Victor told me about that, I knew then why you were a man on a mission. That conversation blew up the entire subterfuge. Victor said that he brushed your story off, at first, but as he drove home, he began to remember some little things that had happened. Times when I had been off on business meetings and came back in a strange mood. Those times when I suggested some new little sexual thing that I'd refused to do before. He put those other things together and realized that it was in a pattern that might confirm your account, and therefore condemn my own actions. We are both practicing Catholics. Since I was denying everything, he demanded that I come down to our church and swear before the altar of God that nothing like what you described had happened, and that I had never cheated on him while with Reed, Lydia, and Grant. Mr. Barrett, I could not do that. That would be a mortal sin. I had committed my other mortal sins and had stopped doing them. Once I did that, I unburdened myself to my confessor. But last night, I just could not lie in the presence of Christ at the altar. So, I refused. I tried to make up reasons, but Victor got more and more angry. He said that our marriage was over. He left. I think he's staying at his country club. I had to leave the house, too. I couldn't bear the silence when he's not there and might never come back. I drove around and around, and now I am here. This happened to you and Evelyn. Now it's happening to me. I know I have no claim to your sympathy after what I've done, but Mr. Barrett, please, I beg of you, tell me what can I do to save my marriage. He looked at her, a beaten woman. Landon. I go by the name Landon, he said. I think that you and I are going to be on a first-name basis from now on. Claire, she said. Okay, Claire. You are asking me for answers. You already know the answers. The first thing you have to do is what Evelyn wouldn't do when it might have mattered. Tell the truth. To Victor, first. Come clean about it, not holding anything back. Tell him what you did and why you did it. Don't leave anything out, and don't try to sugarcoat it. If Victor really loves you, then you have a chance. Getting it all out in the open might let you both begin the healing process. It will take a long time to gain his forgiveness. You may both need extensive counseling, and it is possible that he will never forgive you. There are no guarantees in this deep a matter of betrayal, Claire. And it is betrayal most foul and deep, Claire. Do you understand that? She nodded. Even if he does come around, things will never be the same between the two of you. I think you understand that. But almost anything would be better than what you have now, correct? Her gaze was intent on Landon's face. Yes, I know that you are right, Landon. I will have to go crawling on my knees to Victor and tell it all. God, I can't bear the thought of what he will think of me. But you said that I must tell the truth to Victor first. What did you mean by that? Claire, I have lost the only woman that I have ever loved. She willingly took part in that horrible degrading scheme, and I can never forgive her for that, but the scheme was created and sold to her by the partners at Reed, Lydia, and Grant. I cannot ever have Evelyn and my happy marriage back, but I can have revenge. Part of my revenge will be to take down your law firm and ruin those partners. You are one of those partners, Claire. So, if I said that I'm sorry that I had to attack your marriage, I'd be lying. You were a party to the destruction of my marriage, a very active party. You were Evelyn's mentor and confidant, and she relied on your guidance. You were the one who explained to her what she would have to do if she were ever nominated for partner. You were the one who explained how she would have to prostitute herself for the male partners. You were the one who helped sell her on the idea, because I do not think that Evelyn would have gone along with it, unless she was convinced that it was somehow all right and that she could get away with it without damaging us. Any denials? Protestations of innocence? Claire shook her head. No. I had faced that decision myself. I had made my own devil's bargain. I felt great guilt for it, but I did it and it worked. I became partner. The additional income went to Victor to put into his company. I tried to do everything possible to show him how much I loved him. He got a little suspicious when I started hinting at wanting to do things in our bed that I had always refused, but I wanted to do whatever he had ever dreamed of to add to our union. I guess he never quite forgot his suspicions because he sure remembered them tonight. So when it was Evelyn's turn, I told her she had to do it and how to keep you from finding out. I told her that it would be something that she could make up for by loving you with all her heart. And that was sophistry, pure sophistry. I already loved Victor with my whole heart and soul. Evelyn loved you in the same way. How could we ever make up for our betrayal by loving you more? But we lied to ourselves, each in turn, because of our ambitions. Landon, I can't tell you how shocked and horrified and guilty I felt when Paul Redding called me up and told me that you were on to us. I went to that hasty meeting. I did what I could to try to make up some kind of cover story. It was a lawyerly thing to do something to protect our client and her case. When I first looked at Evelyn's face, I thought that I might die of self-hatred. She knew that she was lost. She knew that you would never be fooled by anything we could fabricate. She knew her marriage was over. And just as she knew that, I knew that if there was a just God, I would face the same fate one day. Landon nodded. Well, what I told you is the first big step. Tell Victor the truth. All of it. Hold nothing back. I can't say what Victor will do. I'm not even sure what I would have done if Evelyn had confessed it all when I gave her that last chance. Anyway, It's too late for us now, but you and Victor have just had this come out. Go to Victor and tell him all of it. Beg his forgiveness. Go to the church or any other good counselor to try to work through it. He loves you and you love him. Maybe there's something that can be salvaged. You must also go to your priest, Claire. As I understand your church, a confession of a sin cannot be pardoned or absolved if you have it in your heart that you will do it again. When you confessed your first dalliance with a partner, you knew there would be others. To take communion when you are not in a state of grace is a mortal sin, Claire. She nodded. I have to deal with that. I will. Right after I get Victor to see me and confess to him. But you said that you want to destroy the law firm. Landon, there are over 100 people working there. Most of them are innocent. You will be hurting them if you put them out on the street. Landon's face hardened. That can't be a factor. I can't permit an evil place to continue because it employs innocent people. There were innocent people who worked in many organizations and bureaucracies that did evil. Should we have kept the shower rooms and furnaces of Dachau and Buchenwald running in the interest of full employment, Claire? She shook her head. I am very single-minded in this, Claire. I will not stand by and let them go on seducing young people and potentially ruining lives. If I can get what I want, I'll be happy to try to help the innocent. If we can find ways to mitigate the effects on the decent people, then we'll do what we can for them. But my main agenda is to Linda Estate Reed, Lydia, and Grant. That is non-negotiable. I have to accept that, Landon, Claire said. I don't think that Victor will accept anything less, either. He is as furious at them as he is at me. You and Victor have been high earners for a long time. Could you walk away from the firm and be okay financially? I suppose we could. We have talked about retirement and setting up some little enterprise to do together in our retirement. Maybe buy something like an inn or country store, something like that. We both want to live away from the cities. If Victor will forgive me and take me back, I will resign and start planning that. No, that's not good enough, Claire, Landon said. No conditions. I want your help regardless of how things go with you and Victor. In any event, you need to get out of the line of fire when I attack the firm. I don't think Victor is ready to retire from his business right now, Landon continued. He was going to hire me in to make him more competitive. Somehow, I doubt he'll want to ever see me again, much less hire me, but he's still involved in his business. Right now, I suspect he's going to be burying himself in it. Now that you and he are in trouble, my question is to you. Will you help me? He asked Claire. Yes, Claire said. I will. I must. I need to stop this. What do you want from me? I need to get proof of how that partnership fast track system works, how an associate gets chosen, then exactly how the sexual requirement is made explicit. I want to be able to show the courts and the world what Evelyn and other young people were lured into doing that ruined their lives and poisoned their marriages. She bears her share of the blame, but it was the firm's process that lured her. I want to concentrate on the young women, because frankly, men are supposed to be such pigs that no one would be surprised that they'd screw anyone decent looking to get promoted. You'll need proof, Claire said. I know you're going to ask me to testify, and of course I will, but any one witness can be discredited. I've done it myself. Do you have anything other than my say-so? Well, Landon said, there were other women who were approached and decided to leave the firm rather than do what was required. I think that if we are getting something substantial together, and it looks as if it might work, some of them might be willing to testify. I know they were bought off and threatened with blackballing, so there must be a reservoir of anger. Sure, but what do we have that's substantial? It has to be more than my testimony. We have to have a better case than that before we can get anyone else to come forward. Landon put a diskette into his laptop and called it up. I don't know whether this is legal enough to stand up in court, he said. You're the lawyer. I have about 8 minutes of a recorded conversation. It was right after I laid down the law to Evelyn that Saturday morning. He clicked on the icon, and the recording began. Claire listened with genuine interest. It was all new to her, and she monitored it with her lawyer's mind, looking for key legal points. Landon had heard it hundreds of times, and it held no interest for him now. Claire clicked back and replayed. Well, he was here, looking at that kitchen and later sleeping in that bed. He listened to me lie in 2 calls over 2 days and never let on that he knew they were lies. God, when he said something offhand about knowing how lonely such a big bed could be, I thought there was something odd in his tone, but I didn't pick up on it. The damage was done by then, only I didn't know it. The last thing he said last night was that he had loved me more than his own life. I should have heard that past tense and reacted to it, but you were having sex with me and I wasn't thinking clearly. She also replayed. Evelyn, this is very important. Did you outright admit that we had sex? Also, bullshit, Paul. Now you listen and listen hard, because I'm not going to lose everything without retribution. I taped the conversations when you and Marjorie explained the arrangement and made the partnership offer, and I have the assurances on the record, and your voice was on there too. The recording cut off then, after 8 minutes 25 seconds, the max recording capacity of the cell phone. Claire said, "That's pretty damaging. Graphic." She saw the expression on Landon's face and stopped. "I'm sorry, Landon. I forgot. Let me think. That was you recording a conversation on your phone system on your property? The only shaky part is that neither party knew they were being recorded. But it's not that different from having a nanny cam. It's your house. Oh, they can attack it several ways, but I think it's pretty firm. They'll challenge its veracity, claim that it was faked. But we'll fight back with voice identification professionals." Claire sighed. "I have something. I never thought that it would stand up as admissible in court, but now, I think that it might be corroborative enough, given your recording. I made a recording in my office when Scott Reed came in and told me that I was under consideration for partner. Then he told me about the rite of passage. He said that I would have to spend 2 days with each of the male partners, acting as if we were lovers. He made it clear what he meant by that. I was shocked, and my first reaction was that I would go to the authorities. But he said that it was a no-win situation. One associate versus a rich and powerful law firm. They would be ruthless to protect themselves. He said that I could refuse and leave, and that they would ease the transition, but everyone knows that when you do that, you lose so much seniority at your new firm. It's not quite starting over, but you do lose ground. Then he told me that it was a basically harmless right. We were all consenting adults. No one would ever know. None of the partners would ever treat me disrespectfully afterwards. He would guarantee that. And the partnership and all that came with it would be mine. He said he was scheduling a business trip for the two of us for the following week. It was my choice, but he needed to know by the next day. I fought my own struggle over it, but greed won out. I thought it could never harm me and Victor. Sound familiar? I told him I would go with him. I never told him that I taped him. It was simply my insurance in case they didn't come through with the partnership. They did, and I forgot about it, until now. I'll give it to you and testify that it is authentic. It will give us another tool. Something else they will have to attack. Landon, can you afford the legal fees for this? They'll fight it tooth and nail. I have been a high earner, too, Landon said. When we were married, we mostly put my salary and fees away and lived off Evelyn's income. She's entitled to half of that when she ever decides to divorce me, but it's now about $1.8 million. Could we support the suit for $0.9 million? It's a start, Claire laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in many hours. Seriously, she said, it could run a lot higher than that, but that would be if we get to court. Trust me, Landon, the firm cannot let that happen. Once this information comes out, they will be lost. Scandal ruins law firms. There will be a crop of suits from the other associates who left. There will be sexual harassment charges. There will be motions for disbarment for all the lawyers involved. Their client list will vanish. Plus, if they lose, which I think is likely, they will be responsible for our legal fees. Landon noticed that Claire sat quietly and thought about the decision she was making. Second thoughts, Landon chided. Claire nodded. I know it should be an easy decision, but despite everything, I gave most of my adult life and all of my professional career to that firm. Setting out to destroy it is difficult. They are not monsters, Landon. I know you can't believe that, but they aren't. They saw it as a rite of passage, with adolescent sexual advantages for the partners. Free nookie. They thought that it was harmless. Despite what I had to do to become partner, once it was done, it was as Scott promised. Not a single one of the men I was with has ever said or done anything that hinted of the slightest familiarity or disrespect. It was something over and done with and never mentioned again. I have never been approached for a further liaison, not even by Paul, who is the closest one to being a pig. So this is hard. After all is said and done, Scott was my mentor and my friend. Landon leaned back and sighed. Claire, he said, you and Victor have a daughter just finishing law school, correct? How did you know? Oh, I know. Due diligence. Yes. Her name is Carol, and she is the pride of our life. She'll be on the Supreme Court someday. Claire, Landon said, when she graduates, what would you think about Carol going to work for Reed, Lydia, and Grant? Do you think that Paul Redding would like that? Can you accept the idea of Carol spreading her legs for him and for your old mentor and friend Scott Reed? There's a picture that I have in my mind. Paul having sex with Evelyn. Just substitute Carol's face for Evelyn's, Claire. The color had been slowly draining out of Marjorie Chapman's face as he spoke. Claire went into his bathroom and washed her face of the smeared makeup and tear tracks. When she came out, she looked 10 years older. Landon, when I go into the office Monday, I'm going to submit my resignation. I don't have to give them reasons, other than personal reasons. Maybe I won't explain. God, how I wish I could talk to Victor and tell him what I'm doing, what we're doing. I tried tonight, and he wouldn't take my calls. Landon nodded. Considering how pissed off he is and how exhausted he probably is, I'm not surprised. He's where I was many months ago. I think he's just either lying in bed staring at the ceiling, or dead to the world. Either way, he's not in a mood to talk. I'll call him Landon tomorrow morning if you'll give me the number of his club. I'll tell him about our conversation. I think with that, he might be willing to talk to you tomorrow. Just remember, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Oh, Claire, there is one more thing. This is just foolishness on my part. But if you think you can do it without spilling the beans, could tell Evelyn that she would be wise to leave the firm, too? Despite everything, I don't want to see her get caught in the buzzsaw I'm going to unleash. Claire stared at him. Landon, I thought you knew? What? Evelyn resigned her partnership and left less than 2 months after you split up. We hated like hell to lose her, but she said she had to make a new beginning. She told me that she had to begin making amends, and that I should too. Landon digested that. He could not extinguish his feelings for Evelyn completely. She had been all of his life for so long. Where is she? Claire, I have had no contact with her since I left. She tried to call me a few times, but I refused to take them, and finally she stopped. I don't socialize in any way that might bring me in contact with mutual friends. Did she go to another firm? Yes, to Dunn and Associates. They have no partnership system. They are simply associates working for Catherine Dunn. Catherine Dunn is my lawyer, Landon said. I know. Evelyn insisted that you not know she was there. She has nothing to do with your legal representation. If you had pressed forward with divorce proceedings, they would have had to consider how to avoid any conflict of interest. Naturally, Catherine would have insulated her from the case. Landon, you spoke as if you won't file for divorce yourself, that you were waiting for Evelyn to do it. Why not end it yourself? I don't know. Maybe I just don't want to cut that last tie. In any event, it's irrelevant. Evelyn was the love of my life. I will never marry anyone else. It doesn't matter whether I'm married or not. It's only a checked box on my tax returns. The next day, Landon made his call, and not surprisingly, Victor agreed to talk to Claire after Landon explained why it could be a good thing. They went to an isolated place in the woods surrounding the golf course. Claire unburdened herself. The whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She apologized for everything and begged Victor to give her another chance. He was shaken, but he didn't walk away from her. Then she told him that she was going to resign from the firm, and what she and Landon were going to do against the firm. That was the first thing she said that brought some life into his face. They continued their talk through dinner. Claire went back home with a faint glimmer of hope. They went for a long drive on Sunday and continued their unburdening. In the end, Victor moved back to the house, and they started the process of forgiveness and healing. There were 3 major differences in their relationship from that of Landon and Evelyn's. One was the length of time they had been together. Nearly 30 years of shared joys and problems had forged strong bonds that helped keep them together. The second was that they had a child. Nancy was now a grown woman in law school, but she would inevitably share in the grief and pain over a permanent split. Neither one wanted to put her through that. It was partially for her that they were willing to work hard to achieve redemption and forgiveness. The third was that Victor had been caught in a month-long affair himself 9 years before. It had been a typical midlife crisis event, and he had regretted it and had gone to Claire and confessed. Claire had been very angry, but had eventually forgiven him and taken him back. It had not been a calculated deception as what Claire and Evelyn had done, but he could not quite take the high moral ground, as Landon could. The campaign to bring down Reed began with Claire Chapman's resignation. She walked into Scott Reed's office and waited while he finished a phone call. He had gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. He hung up and said, "Claire?" She handed him the unsealed envelope and waited while he pulled out the single sheet. She watched the shock on his face as he read the single sentence. "Claire, what on earth is this? Is there some problem here at the firm? Tell me. I'm sure we can work it out. My God, you and I go back together forever. 21 years, Scott. 17 as a partner," Claire said. "And yes, there is a problem, both here and at home." Scott looked surprised. "Scott, I'm sure you remember that horrible time with Evelyn and Landon Barrett." Scott Reed's face began to show a look of growing concern. "Victor and I are in the process of deciding whether we can stay married. Now that he knows that I prostituted myself out to you and the other male partners 17 years ago. Are you really that surprised, Reed? Did you think that Evelyn and Landon would be the only casualties? Sooner or later, the truth was bound to come out. Reed suddenly looked like a much older man than his 58 years. Claire, that was something that I have come to regret with every passing day. You regret it, Claire said, but that hasn't made you stop it. We lost another fine young woman 3 months ago in Maya Alvarez. She had the integrity that I wish I had shown 17 years ago. Well, I'm late discovering my backbone, Reed, but here it is. My leaving is one of several non-negotiable demands that Victor has made. There's my resignation, effective immediately. In Victor's view, what you did to me wipes out any niceties of notice and easy transitions, another non-negotiable demand. My case files are up to date and my assistants can brief whoever takes over my workload. This is goodbye, Scott. In some ways you have been a decent man and a good mentor, but not in others. Your system has wrecked marriages and lives. Scott picked up the letter again and his hands were shaking. This isn't the end of it, is it, Claire? He asked. No. You know it can't be. In order to win my husband back and save my marriage, I have to do what he demands. More non-negotiable demands, Scott. I'm sure that you understand what I mean. She left her shaken mentor. Claire had already removed her personal items from her office, so all that was left was to unpin her ID badge and toss it onto the receptionist's desk. Back in his office, Scott was instructing his secretary to round up all of the partners, to pull them out of court if necessary. This was an emergency. He hung up the phone and stared out the window. He was not seeing the beautiful view. Christ. The partners met and tried to come up with a defense for the inevitable. Their problem was that they did not know when the next blow would be and in what form. Landon Barrett filed suit for divorce, naming Paul Redding and Scott Reed as co-respondents. Then he filed civil suits against them and all of the other partners at Reed, Lydia, and Grant, and the firm itself, as being complicit in a pattern of coerced adulterous actions that destroyed Landon and Evelyn Barrett's marriage. It was a novel charge, the closest that he and Catherine Dunn could come to the obsolete charge of alienation of affections. It would be fought out as a tort action for large awards and penalties. He and Claire filed charges against Reed, Lydia, and Grant for a pattern of sexual harassment. Then they petitioned the Washington State Bar Association for disciplinary action against the cited lawyers in the firm. The firm tried to fight back. They researched Landon Barrett to look for dirt to discredit him. They tried to paint Marjorie Chapman as a disgruntled former employee. But it was to no avail. Landon and Claire were clean. One by one, women at other law firms, former associates at Reed, Lydia, and Grant, came forward and signed on to Landon's side as witnesses. It was strongly rumored that Landon had tapes that revealed the partnership fast-track system. The fact was that while there were legal ploys and mechanisms and delaying actions to fight everything, the revelation of any of it would effectively destroy the law firm. The divorce went through, and offers were made of settlement money. Landon held out for a sum that would bankrupt the firm. The rumors were flying, and the client base of Reed, Lydia, and Grant dwindled. The associates bailed out, and the firm finally had to close their doors. Landon pursued the individual partners on whom he had evidence. They offered settlements, and he held out. He was waiting for any possible legal actions by spouses that would suck away their assets. Only after that would he pursue further, until he was close to stripping them of most of their personal assets. In due course, the Bar Association called for the evidence of misconduct, and Landon Barrett was pleased to submit it. Catherine Redding came back from Europe and filed for divorce. She was soon followed by Valerie Reed. Neither man contested the suit. Both men gave up heavy portions of their assets. Paul Redding, Scott Reed, and all of the remaining partners were censured and stripped of their licenses to practice law for 3 years, after which they could petition for reinstatement, but that was a formality. The likelihood of reinstatement would be remote. Both Paul Redding and Scott Reed decided that they would never be able to practice law again. The divorce settlements had stripped them of most of the assets needed for an easy retirement, so they had to look for work to supplement their modest annuities. Paul Redding moved to a warmer climate with a cheaper cost of living and earned a living writing legal research papers for an online ghost paper service. Some unknown tipster brought down the ghost paper service as a betting of fraud on the law schools that the papers were submitted to as students' original work. One specific paper was one of Paul's, and he was charged and convicted of committing fraud. His suspension from the bar was used as a factor in his sentencing. He was sentenced to 3 to 6 years in prison. Paul Redding contracted AIDS while in prison, although prison authorities insisted that there was no sexual predation in their institution. He died of complications from Kaposi sarcoma before his sentence was up. Scott Reed moved to Arizona and took a job as a paralegal assistant to a Native American tribal councils. He was a far more influential paralegal than most, but still could not practice law, Peresi. Nothing adverse happened to Scott in his new life. That was due to Claire Chapman's wish. When Landon Barrett had figuratively squeezed the last drop of blood from the partners and figuratively strewn salt over the ash-strewn rubble of the once prosperous law firm, he took off his Avenger's cape and went to work for Victor Chapman, who had reconciled with Claire. Landon was an excellent troubleshooter and internal consultant. He helped Chapman Electronics streamline their operations and weed out inefficiencies until it was one of the top 4 or 5 firms in its field. After 3 years, Victor wanted to retire. He and Claire bought a bed and breakfast on the Kitsap Peninsula. He sold out his ownership of the company to Landon. Landon decided he was tired of the tension of his combative specialty and was quite content to put younger people in to run the day-to-day operations while he set policy and monitored. Landon never saw Evelyn again. Evelyn continued to work diligently for Catherine Dunn. Several years later, she started dating a family friend of the Dunns and eventually married him. He lived in the Midwest, so she resigned and moved away to be with him. The marriage fell apart after 3 years when she caught her husband cheating with his secretary. She moved to California where she had family and opened a small family law practice. She never remarried. She never stopped loving Landon, either, but knew that he could never forgive her. Her loneliness was the price she had to pay, and she accepted that. Landon dated casually for several years. Then he met a divorcee with 2 sweet children. It was a casual random encounter. Her car broke down coming back from a camping trip and he stopped by to offer assistance. They got along very well, and he came to love her children as if they were his own. After almost a year, he and Janice got serious enough to try living together. The state did not recognize common law marriage itself, and civil unions were not defined for heterosexuals. Eventually, Landon told Janice the story, leaving out no detail of his revenge. It was a much darker view of Landon than she had ever seen, but she came away from that discussion feeling that she had no fear of him, for herself or her children. Shortly after, they got married to protect their rights as a family. There was not the depth of love that Landon had once had with Evelyn, but they were happy. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The desert was a cruel mistress, a relentless expanse of sand and rock, baking under the sun by day and freezing by night. I had been lying prone for 6 hours, my body half buried in the dirt and grit. The camouflage net draped over me was barely enough to shield me from the blistering Afghan heat. Sweat trickled down my back, pooling at the base of my spine, but I didn't move. Movement was death out here. Through the scope of my M40A5, the world narrowed to a single point of focus, a low, crumbling compound in the distance. Intelligence confirmed it was a safe house for a top-tier militant, a ghost we'd been hunting for months. Codename, Falcon. Real name? Didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd orchestrated the deaths of too many Marines. Today, it ended. The spotter beside me, Corporal Hernandez, whispered into my earpiece. Winds shifting, 1 o'clock, slight breeze. I adjusted the scope ever so slightly, compensating for the drift. The crosshairs settled on the doorway of the compound. No sign of Falcon yet, but patience was the name of the game. My world was the rifle, the target, and the weight. The desert played tricks on you. The mirage shimmered, distorting shapes and distances. I'd learned to ignore it. What I couldn't ignore were the ants. Somewhere around hour 4, they'd found me. Little bastards crawled up my arms, my neck, into my gear. I let them. Scratching was movement, and movement was unacceptable. Then, movement. Not mine, the target's. Hernandez whispered, door. 2 tangos. My finger rested lightly on the trigger as I scanned the doorway. 2 men stepped out, AKs slung over their shoulders. Not him. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. My heart beat in my ears, but my hand was steady as a rock. Minutes ticked by. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the sand. Finally, there he was. Falcon. His face matched the grainy photo in the dossier. Same sharp nose, same cruel eyes. He stepped out into the open, flanked by 2 guards. Hernandez's voice was calm. That's him. Range 800 meters. Wind 2 o'clock, 3 knots. I made the adjustments instinctively, my training taking over. My breathing slowed. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. The crosshairs settled just above his chest, compensating for the drop. I waited for the perfect moment. A sniper's shot is more than pulling the trigger. It's timing, precision, and patience. Falcon paused, turning slightly. Perfect. I squeezed the trigger. Not a jerk, not a pull. A squeeze, like you're shaking hands with death. The crack of the rifle was sharp but brief, swallowed by the desert expanse. Through the scope, I saw the round hit its mark, center mass. Falcon crumpled. The life snuffed out of him before he hit the ground. His guards scrambled, but they were disorganized, panicked. One raised his rifle, scanning the horizon. He'd never see me. Target down, Hernandez confirmed, though I didn't need him to. I'd seen it myself. A clean kill. Pack it up, I said, my voice low. My body screamed as I shifted, the hours of stillness taking their toll. But there was no time to dwell. We moved quickly, dismantling the hide and gathering our gear. The extraction point was 3 clicks west, and the sun was setting fast. As we moved through the sand, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. 18 confirmed kills, and this one felt no different. There was no pride in it, no celebration, just the cold satisfaction of a job done, a mission completed. Somewhere, someone's life was saved because Falcon wouldn't be orchestrating attacks anymore. In the distance, the faint hum of a Black Hawk broke the silence. Our ride was on its way. As I climbed aboard and strapped in, I cast one last glance at the compound. The desert would erase our presence soon enough, swallowing it back into its endless, unforgiving expanse. Another mission complete. Another ghost laid to rest. It had been over a year in this Afghan hell. The missions blurred together. Endless days of sandstorms and sleepless nights, the sound of distant gunfire ever present. The weight of the rifle on my shoulder felt like an extension of my body now. But the real weight, the one that crushed my spirit, was the longing for home. I missed my wife, Claire, and our little girl, Emily, more than I ever thought possible. Claire's phone calls had become infrequent, the time zones and my erratic schedule making it harder and harder to connect. When we did talk, her voice sounded distant, tired. I didn't blame her. Holding everything together back home while I played Ghost in the desert wasn't easy. Emily's voice, once so excited to chatter about school and her friends, had quieted too. The photos Claire sent me were my lifeline. Emily had grown so much in a year. I stared at one picture every night. Emily in her ballet costume, grinning ear to ear, Claire beside her with that same radiant smile. It was my anchor, the thing that reminded me what I was fighting for. And now, finally, I was going home. The orders came through this morning. 1 more week. 7 days until I could hold them both in my arms. 7 days until I could sit on my porch, drink a cold beer, and pretend the war was just a bad dream. I'd count every second until that moment. The desert could keep its secrets and its ghosts. I was done. The wheels of the transport plane touched down with a jolt, and the roar of the engines began to fade. France Heron's heart raced as he stepped off the plane and onto American soil for the first time in over a year. The air smelled different here, clean, fresh, alive. He slung his duffel bag over his shoulder and scanned the sparse crowd at the airfield. No sign of Claire or Emily. The cab ride home was a blur. Every familiar street, every turn, brought him closer to the life he dreamed of during countless sleepless nights in the desert. When the cab pulled up to his house, Wilbur's barking greeted him before he even opened the door. The old Labrador came bounding out as soon as France stepped inside the gate. Wilbur. France knelt down, burying his face in the dog's fur. Hey, buddy, did you miss me? Wilbur wagged his tail so hard it seemed his whole body was shaking. He licked France's face eagerly, as if scolding him for being away so long. France laughed, the sound foreign to his own ears after so much time in silence. All right, France said, scratching behind Wilbur's ears. Let's go inside, huh? The house was eerily quiet. France dropped his duffel by the door, his boots echoing softly on the hardwood floor. The living room looked the same, but something felt off. A sense of unease crept over him as he walked down the hallway toward Emily's room. He pushed the door open gently. Emily was lying on the bed, her small frame almost swallowed by the blankets. A saline drip was attached to her left hand, the foreline leading to a pole by the bed. France's breath caught in his throat. Emily, he whispered, rushing to her side. He knelt by the bed, gently touching her shoulder. Sweetheart, wake up. It's Daddy. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, they were glazed with confusion. Then recognition dawned, and her face lit up. Daddy, she cried, sitting up and throwing her arms around his neck. France held her tightly, his throat constricting as he felt her tears soak into his shirt. Hey, he said softly, stroking her hair. What's going on, baby? Why do you have this? He gestured to the fore. Are you okay? Emily pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm okay, Daddy. Just a little sick. The doctor said I'll be better soon. France's heart ached. Why didn't anyone tell me? Where's Mommy? Emily hesitated, her lip trembling. She looked down at her hands, picking at the blanket. She's out. Out. France's brow furrowed. Out where? Emily glanced up at him, her eyes wide and hesitant. With her boyfriend, Liam Distal. France's jaw tightened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to contain his rising anger. What do you mean? Her boyfriend? Emily's voice wavered as she continued. Daddy, I heard Mommy talking to Liam. She said when you come home and find out she's pregnant with his baby, you'd get mad and attack them. Then they'd say you're dangerous and put you in jail. France's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He forced himself to relax, not wanting to scare his daughter. Emily, are you sure about this? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Please, Daddy, don't hurt anyone. Just take me away. I don't want to be here anymore. Leave Mommy. Divorce her. We'll be okay, just you and me. France knelt down to her level, holding her face gently in his hands. His voice was calm, steady, but his eyes burned with determination. Emily, listen to me. Everything will be fine. Just trust me. France left Emily in her room to rest and stepped into the living room. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. The line picked up after 2 rings. Aaron, a familiar voice said. It was his commanding officer, Major Carter. Major, it's France, he said, his voice tight. I need your advice. France? What's going on? You just got home, didn't you? Yes, sir, France replied, pacing the room. But there's a situation. My wife, she's pregnant with another man's child. I just found out, and there's more. She's planning to provoke me into reacting so they can claim I'm a threat and have me jailed. My daughter overheard everything. Also, I found my daughter in bed with a saline attached to her and no one was at home. She was totally left to fend for her alone, and as of now I don't even know what has happened to her. There was a pause on the other end. Then Major Carter's voice came, firm and steady. Aaron, listen to me carefully. First, you need to stay calm. Don't give them any reason to accuse you of anything. I'm trying, sir, France said, exhaling slowly. What do I do? Call Child Protective Services, Carter said. Explain the situation. They can help you get a restraining order. That'll protect you and your daughter. France nodded, gripping the phone tightly. Okay, what about legal help? Get a lawyer immediately, Carter instructed. One who specializes in family law. They'll guide you on the next steps. Don't rush into filing for divorce until you have the restraining order in place. Protect yourself and Emily first. Understood, France said. Thank you, sir. France, Carter added, his tone softer now. You've been through hell overseas. Don't let this break you. Stay focused. France hung up the phone, his mind racing. He returned to Emily's room and sat on the edge of her bed. Emily, sweetie, everything's going to be okay. I'm going to make sure we're safe. Just trust me. France took a deep breath and dialed the number for Child Protective Services. The phone rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Child Protective Services, this is Priscilla Rich speaking. How can I help you? Ms. Rich, my name is France Heron, he began, his voice steady but tense. I just returned home from deployment to find my daughter in a terrible situation. She's been neglected and unwell, and her mother has been prioritizing her boyfriend over her care. I need help. I understand, Mr. Heron, Priscilla said, her tone immediately serious. Where are you located? I'll come by as soon as possible. Within half an hour, Priscilla Rich arrived at France's home, carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression of no-nonsense professionalism. France led her into the living room and explained the situation in detail, from the neglect Emily had suffered to the disturbing plans Claire and her boyfriend had to paint him as a threat. Priscilla's face hardened as she listened. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. Let me speak with your daughter. France guided her to Emily's room, where the little girl was lying in bed, looking pale and fragile. Priscilla knelt by her bedside, her voice soft and kind. Hello, Emily. My name is Priscilla. I'm here to help you and your dad. Can you tell me how you've been feeling? Emily hesitated, but then nodded. I've been sick for a long time, she said quietly. Mommy doesn't take care of me. She goes out a lot with her boyfriend and at times brings her home and all night they have sex in their room. Priscilla's jaw tightened. When was the last time your mom took you to the doctor? Emily shook her head. 3 weeks ago. Who put this for in you? There is a friend of mom who comes in and does this. Priscilla's face darkened with anger, but she kept her voice calm for Emily's sake. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You're very brave. I'm going to make sure you're safe, okay? Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Please don't let Mommy take me away. I want to stay with Daddy. Priscilla stood and turned to France. Mr. Heron, I've seen enough. This is unacceptable. Women like Claire shouldn't be allowed breed, she said bluntly. I'll be taking immediate action to ensure Emily's safety. She stepped out of the room and made several phone calls, her voice sharp and authoritative as she explained the situation to her colleagues. Once she hung up, she handed France a stack of papers. These are the forms we need to file for an emergency restraining order. Fill them out while I'm here, and I'll get the process started. France nodded, grateful for her efficiency. As he began filling out the paperwork, the doorbell rang. It was his lawyer friend, Joseph Kerr. France had called him earlier, and he had arrived just in time. Joseph, thanks for coming, France said, shaking his hand. This is Priscilla Rich from CPS. She's helping us get a restraining order against Claire and her boyfriend. Joseph nodded and introduced himself to Priscilla. Ms. Rich, it's good to meet you. I've been briefed on the situation, and I'm here to assist in any way I can. Priscilla explained the steps she was taking, and Joseph nodded in agreement. That's the right move. We'll file for full custody as soon as possible. France, make sure you document everything. Texts, calls, anything that shows neglect or abuse. I will, France assured him. Thank you, Joseph. Priscilla finished her calls and turned back to France and Joseph. The restraining order will be processed tonight, and I've arranged for a follow-up visit to ensure Emily's well-being. I'll also be filing a report with the court to recommend that Claire's parental rights be reviewed. France exhaled, a mix of relief and lingering anger in his chest. Thank you, Ms. Rich. I just want Emily to be safe. Priscilla placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. She will be, Mr. Heron. You're doing the right thing. Now, let's get these papers submitted. Meanwhile, I have called Dr. Brown. He will be here in a few minutes. Together, they worked through the remaining forms, and Priscilla left with the completed documents. Joseph stayed behind to discuss the next steps with France, ensuring he understood the legal process ahead. Dr. Brown arrived and spoke to Priscilla. He examined Emily and asked France to bring her in for a few tests, and they can go ahead from there. As the night wore on, France sat by Emily's bed, holding her hand and promising her that everything would be all right. Later that night, the sound of the front door opening interrupted the tense quiet of the house. France, sitting in the living room with his shotgun resting across his lap, watched as Claire and Liam stumbled in, laughing and kissing, completely oblivious to his presence. The moment they noticed him, their laughter died. Claire's face paled as her eyes fell on the shotgun. France, what the hell are you doing? She snapped, trying to mask her fear with indignation. France stood, his posture rigid and unyielding. Stop right there, he ordered, his voice cold and commanding. He raised the shotgun slightly, not pointing it directly at them, but making its presence known. Claire, Liam, this ends now. Liam, trying to play it cool, stepped forward. Hey man, let's talk about this. Don't take another step, France growled, cutting him off. I'm not here to talk. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table in front of them. That's a restraining order. Effective immediately. Claire, you're no longer welcome here. I'm filing for divorce first thing in the morning. You can leave now, or I'll call the cops and have you removed. Claire's eyes narrowed, her bravado returning. You think you can scare me with this? You're going to regret this, France. I'll tell them you're unstable, that you threatened me. France's lips curled into a grim smile. Go ahead and try. The entire conversation is being recorded. He tapped his phone, which was sitting on the table with the screen lit, showing the active recording app. Every word you've said, every threat you've made. It's all here. So, I suggest you think carefully about your next move. Liam sneered, his confidence clearly shaken but unwilling to back down. You can't just kick her out like this. France leveled his gaze at him, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. This is my house. My daughter's safety comes first. You've both crossed too many lines. Now, walk out that door and don't come back. Claire's anger flared, and she stepped forward, her finger jabbing in his direction. You think you can threaten me with that thing? Go ahead, France, pull the trigger. Show everyone what a lunatic you really are. France's grip tightened on the shotgun, but his expression remained eerily calm. Don't mistake me for a fool, Claire. I'm giving you a choice. Walk out now, or I promise you, the next people through that door will be the police. And if you think I'm bluffing about protecting my daughter, try me. Just remember, everything you've said is already documented. Claire hesitated, her bravado cracking under the weight of his unflinching resolve. She glanced at Liam, who looked equally unsure. Finally, she let out a frustrated scream and turned toward the door. "You're going to regret this, France." "We'll see," he replied coldly. "Now leave." With one last glare, Claire and Liam stormed out, slamming the door behind them. France stood there for a moment, the tension in the room slowly dissipating. He set the shotgun down and let out a long breath, his mind already turning to the next steps he needed to take to ensure Emily's safety and their future. 2 days later, Claire was officially served with divorce papers, and Liam received a lawsuit for alienation of affection. When the case went to court, the tension in the room was palpable as France and his lawyer, Joseph Kerr, sat on one side of the courtroom while Claire and her lawyer occupied the other. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, opened the proceedings. "We are here to address the divorce petition filed by Mr. France Heron and the associated claims of child neglect and alienation of affection. Mrs. Claire Heron, the floor is yours." Claire stood, her voice trembling slightly but laced with a practiced sincerity. "Your Honor, I'll admit, I made a mistake. I was missing my husband terribly while he was away serving our country. In a moment of weakness, I sought comfort in Liam, but he's just a friend now, helping me through my pregnancy as a gentleman would. I still love my husband, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this marriage work. I'm asking for counseling so we can try to save our family." France clenched his fists under the table, his jaw tightening as he listened. Joseph rose, his expression calm but resolute. "Your Honor, while my client appreciates the sentiment, we need to address the facts. Mrs. Heron's actions have caused irreparable harm to the marriage. More importantly, her neglect of their child, Emily, has been documented. My client does not believe that reconciliation is in the best interest of his daughter or himself." The judge adjusted her glasses, her gaze piercing. "Mr. Kerr, the court recognizes the gravity of the accusations. However, it is this court's duty to preserve the sanctity of marriage whenever possible. Mrs. Heron has expressed remorse and a willingness to undergo counseling." France stood abruptly, unable to contain himself. "Your Honor, with all due respect, my daughter has been sick for months. Claire didn't bother to care for her and left her alone while she went on dates with Liam. This isn't just about me. It's about Emily's well-being." The judge held up a hand to silence him. "Mr. Heron, I understand your concerns, but the court must also consider the possibility of rehabilitation and reconciliation. Marriage counseling will be mandated for 3 months. Afterward, the court will reassess the situation." Joseph leaned in to whisper to France, "We'll appeal this. Stay calm." France's voice was low but firm as he addressed the judge. "Your Honor, I'll comply with the court's decision, but I want it on record that I strongly oppose this. My daughter's safety comes first." The judge nodded, making a note. "Noted. Mrs. Heron, Mr. Heron, you will both attend court-ordered counseling sessions starting next week. This hearing is adjourned." Claire shot France a smug look as they exited the courtroom, but he didn't meet her gaze. Outside, Joseph placed a reassuring hand on France's shoulder. "We'll fight this, France. Just keep your head up and focus on Emily." France nodded, his expression hard. "I'm not letting her manipulate this situation. Emily deserves better." That night, France lay alone in his bed, the dim light of the bedside lamp casting long shadows across the room. The house was eerily silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves outside the window. His mind raced, unable to find peace as he replayed the events of the past weeks. The betrayal, the lies, the neglect of his daughter. It all churned in his thoughts like a storm. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of his emotions pressing down on him. In every scenario he considered, there was no place for Claire in his future. She had crossed a line, and there was no coming back. His thoughts grew darker as he entertained various plans, each more severe than the last. Kill them both, he thought, his fists clenching involuntarily. But no, that would be too lenient. Too quick. They deserved to face the consequences of their actions, to feel the pain they had caused him and Emily. His mind shifted. Kill the lover, he considered, but the image of Emily's face stopped him. If he ended up in jail, Emily would be left with Claire, and that was an outcome he couldn't allow. Emily needed him, now more than ever. France exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. He was caught in a web of anger and helplessness, his heart aching for his daughter and the family he had lost. Revenge tugged at the edges of his mind, a whisper that wouldn't be silenced. He wanted them to pay, to feel the same pain and humiliation they had inflicted on him. Hours passed as he brainstormed, weighing every possibility, every potential consequence. The anger boiled within him, but exhaustion eventually overtook him. His thoughts grew hazy, and his eyelids grew heavy. As sleep claimed him, one thing remained clear in his mind. Claire was out of his life for good, and somehow, someway, he would find a way to make her pay for breaking his family and mistreating his daughter. The room fell into stillness, the faint sound of his steady breathing the only indication that, for now, he had found a temporary escape in sleep. The news of Claire's dismissal came on a chilly morning, delivered in an impersonal email that stung more than any harsh words could. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the screen of her laptop, her hands trembling as she read the terse message. Dear Mrs. Heron, after careful consideration, we regret to inform you that your employment with this company has been terminated, effective immediately. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely, HR Department. Claire's face flushed with humiliation and anger. How could they do this to me? She muttered, slamming the laptop shut. But deep down, she knew why. Word had spread about her affair and her betrayal of her Marine husband. A man serving his country had made her a pariah in the eyes of her colleagues. The scandal was too much for the company to handle. Later that same day, Liam stormed into the apartment they had started sharing after France kicked Claire out. He threw his work bag onto the floor with a thud, his face twisted in fury. They fired me too, he growled, pacing back and forth. My boss told me offline. I'm bad for business now. Unethical conduct, they called it. Can you believe that? Claire buried her face in her hands. This is all falling apart, she whispered. What are we supposed to do now? Liam scoffed. You think I have the answers? I stuck my neck out for you, Claire. Look where it's gotten me. She glared at him, her frustration boiling over. Don't you dare act like this is all my fault. You were more than happy to be part of this. Liam threw his hands up in exasperation. Yeah, well, maybe we should have thought this through before blowing up your marriage. The room fell silent, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them like a heavy fog. Claire stared out the window, her mind racing. Without their jobs, without stability, the future looked bleak. The consequences of their actions had come crashing down, leaving them both adrift. For the first time, Claire felt the full magnitude of what she had lost. It wasn't just her job or her reputation. It was her family, her stability, and the respect of the world around her. But fate had far worse in store for her. 2 weeks later, France sat across from the counselor, his hands folded tightly in his lap, his posture rigid. The small office was quiet, save for the soft hum of a clock ticking on the wall. The counselor, a young woman with a calm demeanor and warm eyes, sat patiently, waiting for France to speak. So, she began, breaking the silence, tell me why you're here today. How are you feeling about everything? France clenched his jaw, his mind immediately drifting back to the courtroom, to the betrayal, and to the hurt he still carried. He took a deep breath before speaking, his voice low but steady. I'm here because the court ordered me to. For me, this is just a waste of time. Let's talk about your daughter, she said in a calm voice. My daughter, Emily. She's been sick, and my wife, Claire, was screwing her lover while my daughter was being neglected. She didn't care. My daughter was left alone to suffer. France paused, his eyes narrowing as the anger started to creep into his tone. I can't just let that go. I can't forgive it. The counselor nodded, taking notes as she listened. I understand that this situation is incredibly painful for you. It sounds like your daughter's well-being is at the heart of this. Exactly, France replied, his fists clenching involuntarily. I've been fighting for her, for our family. But Claire doesn't deserve another chance. Not after everything she's done. The counselor leaned forward slightly, her voice gentle yet firm. But France, she has expressed remorse. She's willing to attend counseling, to try and repair the marriage. Maybe this is a chance for you both to heal, for Emily's sake as well. France's face darkened, his lips curling into a tight, bitter smile. You want me to give her another chance? He asked, his voice edged with disbelief. I can trust a rattlesnake before I trust my wife. She's lied to me, manipulated me, and put my daughter in harm's way. The counselor met his gaze with unwavering calm. It sounds like there's a lot of pain here. But people can change, France. And if she's genuinely remorseful, isn't it worth trying? For your family, for Emily? France's eyes flashed with frustration, his hands gripping the arms of the chair. You don't get it, he said through gritted teeth. She's just been lying to everyone. I can see right through her. She's playing the victim, but I'm not falling for it. The counselor didn't flinch. You're in pain. I understand that. But if Claire is truly sorry, maybe there's a way forward. Trust takes time to rebuild, and she needs to show you that she's committed to making it right. France laughed and said, I am a Marine. We are the breed of men you don't see on TikTok. Emotional pain that you talk about has long been suppressed and forgotten. We are trained to move on. If we lose one leg, we hop. We lose both legs, we crawl. But we keep moving forward till we get what we want. As for that manipulative bitch, I don't need her to show me anything. I'll prove to you. I'll prove to everyone that she's been lying. She doesn't deserve another chance. Not after what she's done. With that, France stood and said, I guess time is up. Have a nice day, lady. The next morning, France's hands shook slightly as he picked up the newspaper from the doorstep, his eyes scanning the headline. Man found dead, possible loan shark involvement. His heart skipped a beat. The name of the deceased wasn't familiar, but the mention of loan sharks struck a nerve. He knew one such man, the kind of man who was never far from trouble. The wheels in his mind began to turn, his thoughts racing. He could almost feel the weight of his past choices closing in on him. Could this be the chance I need? He thought. Maybe this is the way to make Claire pay. Make them all pay. He grabbed his phone, his hands steady despite the storm of thoughts inside his head. Dialing Joseph's number, he waited impatiently as the phone rang. When his lawyer picked up, France didn't waste time. Joseph, we need to talk, France said, his voice urgent. Joseph's voice came through, a calm contrast to France's anxiety. What's going on? Is everything okay? No, France snapped, his words coming out faster now. I've got a plan. It involves the loan sharks. That guy in the paper. I know him. I can make it work. There was a long pause on the other end before Joseph spoke, his tone serious. France, no. This isn't the way. You can't go down that road. This will only end badly for you. Believe me. I know what I'm doing, France replied, his voice colder now. I don't care what happens. It's time for Claire to feel the consequences of what she's done. And this is the way. Joseph sighed, a mix of concern and frustration in his voice. I can't let you do this. You're putting everything on the line. Your future, your freedom. This is dangerous. I'll help you find another way. But not this. France's jaw tightened. This is the only way, Joseph. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm telling you what I'm doing. There was silence for a moment, then Joseph spoke again, quieter. I'm not going to be part of this, France. But I'll be there if you need me. Just think about it. You don't want to regret this. The line went dead, and France sat still for a moment, staring at his phone. He had made up his mind. There was no turning back. Later that evening, France and Joseph walked into the dimly lit bar known as the Cave. The stale smell of cigarettes and whiskey lingered in the air, and the low murmur of voices filled the space, creating an atmosphere of secrecy and tension. France's eyes scanned the room, seeking the faces he knew all too well, those who operated on the darker side of things. Joseph leaned in, his voice low. Hell, why did I let you drag me into this? Let's get out of here, France. This is our last chance. We can leave now, before anything goes wrong. France didn't answer right away. His gaze was focused on the far end of the bar, where a group of men lingered, their eyes suspiciously darting between each other. He could feel the pull of the situation, like a magnetic force. This was the moment where everything could change. Relax, Joseph, France said, his voice calm but firm. We're here to talk. Just trust me. Joseph clenched his jaw, clearly uncomfortable. Trust you? You're putting us both in danger. You don't even know what you're walking into. Before France could respond, a figure moved from the shadows toward their table. The man was tall, his broad shoulders filling the doorway as he approached with a purposeful stride. He stopped in front of them, his eyes locked on France. Boss is waiting for you, the man said, his voice gravelly and commanding. Joseph's eyes widened, a look of realization crossing his face. He grabbed France's arm, but it was too late. France stood, unfazed, as he nodded toward the man. Relax, France said to Joseph, his voice resolute. Joseph opened his mouth to protest, but France silenced him with a glance, signaling for him to stay back. There was no turning back now. France and Joseph entered the dimly lit room, their footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The air inside was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and a hint of something darker. The walls were adorned with velvet curtains, hiding the true nature of the space. At the far end of the room sat a massive, imposing figure in a leather chair. The man was easily 6'6", with broad shoulders and muscles bulging under his tight-fitting shirt. He sat with an air of authority, his gaze unflinching as he studied France and Joseph. As France stepped forward, the man slowly rose from his chair, each movement deliberate and imposing. The silence in the room was heavy, the weight of the moment settling over them. Then, to France's surprise, the large man broke into a wide grin. "God, you're here," the man boomed, his voice deep and gravelly. Without warning, he crossed the room and wrapped France in a bear-like hug, lifting him off the ground for a brief, yet powerful embrace. "It's great to see you again, France. You don't know how much I've missed you." France smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his chest despite the circumstances. "Good to see you too, Mike. Been a long time." Mike, the giant of a man, pulled back slightly, still grinning ear to ear. "You know, had it not been for you back in Baghdad, I wouldn't be here today. I owe you my life." His eyes softened for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. He motioned to the group of men standing in the shadows, waiting at the edges of the room. "Everyone, this is the man who saved my life. France Heron, the real deal." The goons, most of them just as intimidating as Mike himself, nodded in silent acknowledgement, their expressions a mix of respect and curiosity. Mike then waved his hand toward the table, where bottles of high-end liquor and glasses sat, waiting. "Drink, gentlemen," Mike offered, his voice rich with the charm that came with his position. "You know I always keep the good stuff on hand." Joseph hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. He glanced at France, as if to ask whether it was safe to accept. But France gave him a reassuring look and then nodded toward Mike. "I'll take one," France said. "Thank you." Mike, noticing Joseph's uncertainty, grinned again. "Relax, Joseph. You're with France, which means you're with me." He looked at Joseph with a raised eyebrow, his smile never faltering. "France's buddy is my buddy." Joseph's posture softened, though his expression remained cautious. Mike's grin didn't waver as he filled a glass for France and then turned to Joseph. "And his enemy is my enemy." Joseph stiffened at the words, but Mike didn't seem to notice. He poured himself a drink, his eyes glinting with unspoken promises of loyalty and power. The room grew heavier as France began recounting the details of his ordeal, the bitterness in his voice palpable as he spoke. Mike listened intently, his eyes narrowing as France laid out the story, the betrayal, the lies, the neglect of his daughter. France's words came like a flood, and as he finished, Mike's face darkened with understanding. "Damn," Mike muttered, shaking his head slowly. "That's cold, France. You deserve better than that." He took a deep breath, his imposing figure shifting slightly in the chair as he processed the information. Then, his eyes flickered with a dangerous gleam. "You want me to handle this? Make them disappear? Both your wife and her lover? Clean slate, no questions asked." The words hung in the air, and France felt a knot in his stomach. He'd been expecting the offer, but hearing it made it all the more real. He didn't flinch. His mind was made up, but he didn't respond immediately, his thoughts racing. Joseph, who had been silent up until this point, cleared his throat, his voice low and cautionary. "You don't want to go down that road, Mike," he said, looking between the two men. "If France's wife and her lover suddenly vanish, France is the obvious suspect. It's too much of a risk, too much heat. We can't afford that kind of attention." France shot Joseph a look, the frustration clear in his eyes. "I've thought it through, Joseph," he said firmly. "I'm not going to let them get away with what they've done, not when it's cost me so much. But I know we need to be careful." Mike raised a massive hand, signaling for calm. "Joseph's right. We don't need a mess. But I'm with you, France. We'll make it look like an accident." His voice dropped into something darker, more dangerous. "No one will know we were involved, but you'll get what you want. They won't be around anymore, and you'll finally get some peace. No, they don't need to die. I am not going to be lenient of them," he said. "I have a plan, a good plan. We're going to make sure everything falls into place." He turned his attention back to Mike, locking eyes with him. "And I'll make sure no one suspects that I was behind it." Then France proceeds to explain what needs to be done. Mike smiled, the predatory gleam in his eyes now a cold promise. "That's the France I know. You always think ahead. All right, we'll follow your lead. Just tell us what you need, and we'll make it happen." Joseph glanced between them, his skepticism softening but not entirely gone. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'm in," he muttered. "But I'm telling you, we need to cover every angle. No mistakes." France gave a nod of agreement, a sense of finality settling in his chest. We won't make any mistakes. I'll handle everything. This ends now on my terms. Mike raised his glass in a toast, his grin returning. To making it right, France. Joseph reluctantly raised his glass as well, his expression unreadable but his resolve clear. To doing what needs to be done. The three men clinked their glasses, the weight of the unspoken plan hanging heavily in the air. They didn't need to say more. France knew they were all in, and now, it was only a matter of execution. Claire and Liam sat quietly in the corner of the bustling coffee shop, the hum of conversation and the clinking of mugs providing a background to their own exchange. As Claire sipped her latte, her eyes occasionally darted to the two men seated at the next table, engaged in a deep conversation. They spoke in low tones, but Claire's attention sharpened when she heard one of them mention something about a new mall project. She leaned in slightly, trying to make out their words. It's prime real estate, one of the men said, pointing at a map spread out before them. We need to move fast before anyone else picks up on it. The second man nodded, tapping the map with his finger. This location, he said, this is the center of the whole development. We can't afford to let it slip through our fingers. Claire's curiosity piqued when she saw them circle a spot on the map. The lines on the paper drew her eyes to the location, and a strange feeling settled in her gut as the first man mentioned the address. Her gaze narrowed, recognition flooding her senses. That's my house, she blurted out, unable to stop herself. Both men froze, glancing at each other before looking back at Claire with raised eyebrows. Excuse me, the first man asked, his voice suddenly curious. Claire smiled faintly, a mix of excitement and pride rising in her chest. That's my house, she repeated. The one you're looking at. The two men exchanged looks of surprise, one of them speaking first. Wait, is it yours, or is it your husband's? Claire's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. It's my husband's house, but I can sell it. Her voice carried a sense of finality, a clear decision having already been made. The second man leaned forward, his eyebrows shooting up. Hold on, are you the one who? He trailed off, the question hanging in the air. Claire didn't flinch. Yes, she replied simply. I'm the one who cheated on my husband. What's it to you? The two men looked at each other, uncertainty flickering across their faces. After a pause, the first one spoke again, his tone a mix of caution and curiosity. Last we heard, you were trying to reconcile with him. If you're still working on that, we won't get the house. Claire's fingers tightened around her cup, her grip firming as she stared at the men. I'm not reconciling with him, she said, her voice unwavering. I'm going to get the house in my divorce and then I can sell it. The two men exchanged glances, their expressions turning serious as they leaned in closer to Claire, their voices lowering. Look, the first man began, tapping the map on the table. We need to be straight with you. You might never get the full house. If your husband offers you half, that's what you'll get. The rest stays with him. That's the reality of it. Claire's jaw tightened, her grip on her cup tightening. Half, she repeated, her voice edged with frustration. But it's my house. Why should I settle for half? The second man, the more businesslike of the two, shrugged. It's how these things work. If he decides to give you half, it's a fair deal. And if he doesn't, well, you could end up with nothing. The court won't give you more than what's been agreed on unless you can prove something drastic. Claire's mind raced as she tried to process the information. So, what are you suggesting? How can I turn this around? The first man leaned forward, his eyes intent. Here's what we know, he said, voice steady. The mall project is still under wraps, top secret. If you can move fast and manage to make the deal work in your favor, say, by getting your husband to agree to something bigger than half, there's still a chance. A chance for you to take the house, and maybe even more. But time is critical. Claire's curiosity was piqued, but she needed more details. How exactly would I do that? She asked, her tone sharp with determination. The second man, who had been quiet up until now, spoke with a touch of warning. Well, it's all about timing. If you push for more money from him, somehow convince him to up the ante, then you might have a shot at securing it. But that's not all. The information about the mall's development is still confidential. Once it breaks to the public, the value of that property is going to skyrocket. Claire frowned, the gears in her mind turning. How much are we talking about here? She asked. One of the men smirked slightly, the glint in his eye almost calculating. The price is going to go up by 20 folds, he said, his voice laced with significance. Claire's breath caught at the thought, the implications of such an increase sending a jolt of excitement through her. The stakes had just gotten much higher. Claire's brow furrowed with concern as she leaned back in her chair, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. I don't have that kind of money, she admitted, her voice low, the weight of the situation settling on her chest. The two men exchanged a look before the first one leaned forward, his expression shifting to something more calculated. You might not have it now, he said, but we know someone who can help. Claire's eyes narrowed as she listened intently. Who? The second man, who had been silent up until now, spoke in a low voice. Mike Baker. He's the guy who lends money when the banks won't. He's got connections, but he doesn't play nice with anyone who fails to pay him back on time. Claire's stomach dropped at the name. Mike Baker, she repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. I've heard of him. He's dangerous, isn't he? Liam, sitting beside her, suddenly gripped her arm with a force that made her flinch. His voice was urgent, low, and filled with caution. Claire, you don't understand. Mike is not someone you want to owe. If the money's not returned by the deadline, he might not just take what's his. He'll kill you. No questions asked. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. The thought of dealing with someone like Mike Baker was terrifying, but she knew there was no other way to make the deal work. She pulled her arm free from Liam's grip, her voice shaky as she asked, How much do I need to borrow from him? The first man, sensing her growing anxiety, straightened his suit and smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's for you to figure out. But don't worry. Mike doesn't just lend money. He'll make sure you get the cash you need. But remember, if you don't pay him back, he'll come looking. And he won't forget. Claire felt her heart racing as she processed the danger that loomed over her. The two men stood up, their movements synchronized and precise, as if this was a routine for them. The first man pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Call us if you have the house, he said, his voice cool and indifferent. Claire hesitated for a moment, staring at the card, her mind still reeling from everything they had told her. She finally nodded, swallowing her fear. I'll call you, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The two men exchanged a final look before they turned and walked out of the coffee shop. 2 days later, Claire and France were supposed to be in a joint counseling session. France arrived early and was waiting. Melinda stood across from him, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Mr. Heron, she began, her tone professional yet sharp, I've asked you before if you're willing to give Claire another chance. We've discussed the issues in your marriage, and reconciliation is something we can work toward. France scoffed, shaking his head. Listen, lady, he said with a small, almost mocking smile. Reading books, getting trained, and making mock scenarios might get you a license or a degree to counsel people. But it doesn't guarantee that you can actually read people. His eyes narrowed as he continued, his voice growing colder. I told you before, and I'm telling you now, Claire is just lying. Melinda's expression shifted from calm to something more defensive, her eyes narrowing slightly. Mr. Heron, I'm a professional, and I don't take accusations like that lightly. You need to approach this situation with an open mind. France's tone remained unwavering as he stood up, towering over the desk. You're not getting it, he said, his voice firm and low. Claire's a liar, and I know it. She's been playing a game, and I'm not falling for it. Melinda's face flushed with frustration, her patience clearly wearing thin. Mr. Heron, you're so certain of that. But have you truly tried to understand what's going on with her? Have you considered? Before she could finish, France interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. No, I'm done trying to understand someone who's been lying to me this whole time. But if you want to bet, let's make it interesting. Melinda blinked, taken aback by the sudden change in tone. Bet? What are you talking about? France's smile was cold and calculating. I'll bet you. If you can prove me wrong, I'll agree to keep going with this session. But if I win, he leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with her. You do as I say. You have a Marine's word on that. Melinda's eyes flashed with a mix of disbelief and arrogance, as if she believed she could easily win whatever challenge he was proposing. She squared her shoulders, stepping toward him with confidence. You're on, she said, her voice taking on a playful yet challenging tone. If I win, you'll continue with these sessions, but if you win, I'll do whatever you ask. Agreed? France's eyes darkened slightly, a hint of approval flickering in them as he leaned back in his chair once more. Agreed. Melinda smiled, but the arrogance was unmistakable. Then we have a deal. I will do what you ask me to do. The door to the counseling room opened, and Claire strode in, her expression one of defiance. Melinda greeted her with a smile, but it was clear that the atmosphere in the room had already shifted. She was wearing a very revealing top and most of her cleavage was out for display. Her skirt was short would be an understatement. Welcome, Claire. You look, anyways, Melinda said, trying to maintain a professional tone. We're here for a joint counseling session. Let's begin by talking about— Stop it, bimbo, Claire interrupted, her voice sharp and biting. Let me speak now. She gave France a pointed glance before continuing, her tone dripping with venom. He wants a divorce? Great. I'll give him a divorce. Give me that house I lived in, and we are done. I want nothing else. Melinda's jaw dropped, the sudden change in tone catching her completely off guard. She turned to France, and though he was trying hard to keep the smile from spreading across his face, he couldn't entirely conceal the satisfaction in his eyes. But, Melinda stammered, clearly struggling to process what Claire had just said. You were the one who wanted to reconcile, Claire. We talked about this before. Claire rolled her eyes, cutting her off with a sneer. Reconcile? Screw that. I was cheating in his dumb idiot. My lover Liam is great in bed, and at least, unlike my so-called warrior husband, he stays in bed and pleases me. Doesn't run off to deserts playing Nerf wars. She leaned in closer to Melinda, her voice turning more venomous. I never wanted to reconcile with him. I just wanted his paycheck. France's lips twitched, and he fought to hide his grin as he watched the exchange. Claire wasn't finished. She looked at France, her eyes full of contempt. Did you listen, you dumbhead Marine? Just your paycheck. I can get pleasure from anyone I like. And your sickly daughter? She can rot in hell too, and as for your dog, I used to call him near me, and as soon as he came waging his tail, I kicked him, and even Liam enjoyed kicking him. This counseling doesn't mean a thing to me. Melinda, still trying to maintain some semblance of control, interrupted again, her tone desperate. But Claire, you said you wanted to reconcile. Claire snapped back immediately, her voice louder now, almost mocking. Well, newsflash, bimbo, I lied. Now punish me, bitch. I hope you put in that report that I don't want any reconciliation and I want a divorce, and make sure that you write that I need that house. I am leaving. I have a lover to enjoy. With that, Claire stood up, grabbing her things and walking out of the room, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving Melinda standing there, stunned and speechless. France sat back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk creeping onto his face as he watched the counselor try to regain her composure. Melinda stood frozen in place, her eyes wide in disbelief, as the door slammed behind Claire. Her shock was palpable, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to process what had just unfolded. Does she have any idea that this will ruin her chance for any sort of reconciliation? Melinda asked, her voice low and filled with genuine concern, though it was clear she was beginning to panic. France didn't even flinch. He stood up slowly, his eyes cold and calculating, and gave her a look that spoke volumes about how little he thought of her understanding. You have no idea what you're dealing with, do you? He said, his voice smooth, but carrying an undercurrent of frustration. This isn't about reconciliation. This is about control, power, and getting what I want. So, let me remind you of our little deal. Melinda looked up at him, her face pale. Her mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she looked at him with pleading eyes, the emotion clearly building in her chest. There was a vulnerability to her that hadn't been present before, a crack in the professionalism she had tried so hard to maintain. Please, France, she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Don't do this. I can help you. You know you will do as I say, right? France interrupted, his tone unwavering, almost predatory. His gaze locked onto hers, and for a brief moment, he could see the fear flash in her eyes. She looked like she might break down, her composure slipping. But France was done with words for the moment. He wasn't going to listen to any more of her feigned sympathy. He was finished with the counseling session, with all of it. He gave her one last cold look before turning toward the door. I'll be back, he said. With that, he walked out, leaving Melinda standing there, caught between shock and regret, unsure of what had just begun. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with the weight of frustration as the judge peered over his glasses at the revised petition in front of him. Unknown to anyone in the court, the judge was Melinda's the uncle, and on the personal request of his niece, he had agreed to take a deeper look at the divorce. Judge Parker knew about the incident at the counseling session and was out here to make an example out of Claire for making a fool of Melinda. Claire sat at the plaintiff's table, her arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. France sat across from her, his posture rigid, Yet there was a certain satisfaction in the quiet stillness of his presence. The judge cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the silence with an edge of anger. "Mrs. Heron," he began, his tone sharp, "I've reviewed your revised petition, and frankly, it's quite the surprise. 1 minute, you're demanding counseling to reconcile, and now, you come to me with a sudden change of heart, asking for a divorce and nothing as alimony but only the house." Claire's lips curled into a small, tight smile, her gaze meeting the judge's with a mixture of arrogance and defiance. "I've made my decision, Your Honor. I just want the house. I have my sentiments attached to that house, that's all." The judge leaned back in his chair, visibly annoyed. "A house you never put in the effort to maintain or appreciate, mind you. I'm not so quick to forget that." He shuffled the papers on his desk, clearly weighing his next words carefully. "I understand your position, Mrs. Heron, but let me be clear. You will get only 50% of what you're demanding. And if you want the house, you will pay the price that Mr. Heron sees fit. This is not a charity. You don't simply get what you want because you've decided you deserve it." Claire's eyes widened momentarily, but she quickly regained her composure, her jaw tightening. "I'm not paying anything," she spat, her voice full of venom. "It's my house." The judge's eyes flashed with irritation as he leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Then perhaps you're misunderstanding this situation," he snapped. "The house, as it stands, is Mr. Heron's, and if you want it, you'll have to buy it from him. I'm giving you 50% of what you initially asked for, but that's the most you'll get. The divorce is granted on those terms. As for the custody of 12-year-old Emily, I give Mr. Franz Heron full custody, and if Miss Claire wants to meet Emily, it is to be done under supervision only. Mr. Heron has been kind enough to let go of any child support requirements from Mr. Claire." The gavel slammed down on the desk with finality, echoing through the courtroom. France couldn't help the small, almost imperceptible smirk that tugged at the corner of his mouth. Claire's face flushed with a mix of disbelief and anger, but the judge's decision was clear. With that, the judge said, his voice firm, "The divorce is granted." Claire sat at the kitchen table, her fingers nervously tapping on the surface as she dialed the number of the two men. Her mind raced as she waited for the call to connect. She had no time to waste. The clock was ticking, and the price of the house was set to skyrocket. Her desperation grew with every second. When the phone clicked, a voice greeted her. "Yeah, it's Claire," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to know if the price is still going to be up by 20 times the current value." There was a brief pause before the man responded, his tone casual but with an edge. "Yeah, the price is still going up. 20 times. But it has to be done ASAP, Claire. Someone's already approached France, and he's in talks with them. If you don't act fast, you'll miss your chance." Claire's heart dropped. "What do you mean by ASAP?" she pressed, her voice tight with anxiety. "You need to get it done, now. Time's running out." The man's voice hardened. "Make it quick, or it's not going to happen." Claire hung up the phone, her pulse racing. She needed to act, and fast. Without a second thought, she grabbed her phone again and dialed Liam. He picked up on the first ring. "Liam, I need to meet Mike. We need to get the money now." "Wait, hold on." Liam's voice was a mix of concern and disbelief. 600,000? Are you sure we can pull this off?" Claire didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice. Mike's the only one who can help us. The price is going to shoot up, and if we don't get the money now, we'll lose everything." Liam was silent for a moment, clearly processing the urgency of the situation. "All right, I'll make it happen. But we need to meet Mike as soon as possible." Minutes later, they were sitting in a dimly lit office, the smell of cheap cigars lingering in the air. Mike sat behind a large desk, his expression unreadable as he looked them over. Claire and Liam stood in front of him, their nerves barely concealed. "I need 600,000, Claire said, cutting to the chase. "Can you give it to me?" Mike leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "I can give you the money, but I'll need something in return." Liam glanced at Claire, his jaw tight. "We'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of tension. Mike nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving them. "I'll give you the money, but you need to pay me back. I'm not one to forget a debt." He paused, his gaze flicking to Liam. "And I'm going to need something from you too." Liam's face tightened, but he nodded. "What's the deal?" Mike smirked. "Mortgage your house to me for $300,000, and we'll call it even. The rest you'll pay back within a month." Liam looked at Claire, who nodded quickly. "It's the only way," she whispered. Liam stood up, his decision made. All right, we'll do it. Mike smiled. Good. You've got the money, but remember, pay me back within a month. Or else. Claire and Liam left the office, a mix of relief and dread settling over them. They had what they needed, but the pressure was mounting. The next day, Claire and Liam sat in front of France at the lawyer's office, the tension between them palpable. The paperwork had already been drawn up, and now all that was left was the exchange. Claire slid the check across the table to France, her fingers trembling slightly. 600,000 for the house, she said, trying to sound confident, but there was an undercurrent of unease in her voice. France looked down at the check, then back at Claire. His face remained stoic, showing no emotion. He nodded, taking the check and quickly putting it into his coat pocket. There was a long silence before Claire spoke again. I'm sorry, she said, her voice wavering slightly. I shouldn't have cheated on you. I lied about being pregnant too. It was all just a ploy to try and get you to lose control. I'm sorry for everything. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact with both of them. France didn't react to her words, his gaze cold and distant. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. It's over now, Claire continued, her voice more resolute. I'm glad it's over. I wish you the best, France. I truly do. France took a long moment before finally speaking, his voice quiet but firm. You should meet Emily once, he said, his eyes hardening slightly. She's in the hospital, getting her dialysis done. She was on the verge of losing her kidneys. A small infection flared into something life-threatening just because of your negligence. You should apologize to her. Claire's face faltered for a second, confusion crossing her features. Emily? I don't understand. She's your daughter, France said flatly, and you owe her an apology. I'm done. But she's the one you should be concerned with now. With that, he turned on his heel and walked toward the door. He didn't look back. The evening settled in, and the soft glow of the apartment lights reflected off the glass of wine in Claire's hand. She leaned back into the plush couch, feeling a mix of relief and excitement after their intense session earlier. Liam sat beside her, his arm draped lazily around her shoulders as they exchanged slow, contented glances. You know, Claire said, swirling her wine in the glass, this whole thing might just work out after all. Liam smirked, taking a long sip from his own glass. What, the house? The money? Or the fact that you finally got what you wanted? Claire rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Both. All of it. It's like everything's falling into place, Liam. Well, as long as we don't end up in a bigger mess, Liam joked, raising an eyebrow. Claire chuckled, her gaze shifting toward her phone on the coffee table. I'm not worried about that. Everything's lined up. She paused, a thought striking her. I should check in with those guys, see if they're still on board. Just to make sure the plan is solid. Liam shot her a look. You sure about that? After everything we've been through? Claire nodded, her confidence returning. I'm sure. If they can follow through, we're golden. We just need them to stick to their end of the deal. With a determined flick of her finger, Claire grabbed her phone and unlocked it. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for the two men who'd promised her an out, who'd promised her a way to get what she needed. Without hesitation, she hit dial. As the phone rang, Claire's eyes narrowed slightly, her fingers tapping impatiently on the armrest. She waited for the connection to be made, each second stretching longer than the last. But no one answered. Claire's hands trembled as she dialed the number again, staring at the phone in disbelief. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Her frustration mounted as she glanced at the clock on the wall, well past office hours now. Maybe they're just not picking up, she muttered to herself, setting the phone down beside her glass of wine. She sighed, letting the warmth of the alcohol take the edge off her frustration. I'll try again tomorrow. The morning came, and Claire found herself reaching for the phone as soon as she woke up. Her fingers hovered over the screen, dialing the number again with a sense of urgency. Ring, ring, ring. Nothing. She tried again, and again. Her heart began to race with every failed attempt. Why the hell won't they answer? Claire said to herself, growing more frantic. What's going on? Liam, still groggy from the night before, sat up in bed and rubbed his eyes. What's wrong? I don't know, Claire said, her voice rising. I keep calling these guys, and they won't pick up. Something's not right. Liam sighed, rubbing his forehead. Maybe you're just getting paranoid. No, Claire snapped, shaking her head. Something's off. I need to know where they are. I need to talk to them. Liam looked at her, a flicker of unease crossing his face. And what's the plan once you find them? I don't know, but I can't let this go, she replied, determination in her voice. I have to fix this. I need the money. Without another word, Claire grabbed her purse, storming out of the apartment. Liam followed, though with more reluctance, his eyes betraying his growing concern. They arrived at the address listed on the card after a short drive. It wasn't what Claire had expected. It was a strip club. Claire stared at the building for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. She looked at the neon lights and the dark, empty parking lot outside. This can't be right, she whispered, her stomach dropping. Liam cursed under his breath. You've got to be kidding me. A damn strip club? Claire's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, her face contorting in a mix of shock and betrayal. I can't believe I fell for it, she whispered through clenched teeth. I'm so stupid. Liam stood over her, his voice hard and laced with anger. You fell for it? You weren't the only one who bought into this mess, Claire. I should have known better, too. Claire looked up at him, her eyes welling with tears. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to fall for a con like this? Look at where we are. Liam shot back. This whole thing has been a joke from the start, and now look at you. Crying like you're the only one who's been duped. Claire's face reddened, and she jumped to her feet, glaring at him. Don't act like you're the victim here, Liam. You're just as much a part of this mess as I am. Don't you dare put this all on me. The anger between them simmered, but the silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of their shared realization. Finally, Claire wiped her eyes and stood up straighter. Let's just go home. There's nothing more we can do here. The drive back was silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts. When they finally reached their apartment, Claire felt drained. I don't know what to do now, she muttered. Liam sighed heavily as he opened the door. I don't either. Claire and Liam entered the apartment, the weight of their thoughts heavy in the air. As the door clicked shut behind them, Liam immediately spoke, his voice tense. You know, I think France had something to do with those two men, Liam said, crossing his arms over his chest as he leaned against the wall. Claire froze for a moment, her hand still on the doorknob. Her mind raced with the possibility, but she quickly dismissed it. No, he is not that bright, she muttered to herself, trying to shake the thought away. I don't know, Liam. He's always been a bit strange, but this? No. Liam raised an eyebrow, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Think about it, Claire. The way they had all the details about the house and the land, and the way they were so sure that price was going to skyrocket. I think they were working with him the whole time. Claire's eyes narrowed, the anger starting to seep into her voice. You think so? That bastard was in on it the entire time, setting us up. She clenched her fists, her mind filling with images of France and those two men laughing behind her back. He conned us both. He lied to me the whole time. Liam nodded, stepping closer to her. I told you. We should have been more careful, but we didn't listen. Now we're stuck. Claire took a deep breath, trying to calm the growing rage inside her. She walked toward the kitchen counter and grabbed her phone. I'm going to call a few people. We'll get this sorted out. Let me just. She quickly dialed a number for a couple of real estate contacts she had. A few calls later, she placed the phone down on the counter with a sharp exhale. There's nothing, Liam. No one's heard of any mall plans. Nothing's in the works at all. That was all just a lie. Liam's face darkened with realization. I knew it. Those two men were just playing us. It was all a setup. Claire turned away from the counter, her thoughts racing. He made us both believe it, Liam. And now, I'm going to make him pay for this. I don't care how, but he's going to pay. Liam's eyes gleamed with a mix of frustration and curiosity. How, Claire? How are we going to make him pay? Claire paused, her expression hardening as she looked out the window, trying to focus. Her mind was spinning with possibilities. Let me think, Liam, she said quietly, a dangerous calm settling over her. 3 weeks had passed since Claire had made the decision to move forward with paying Mike. The weight of the situation had only grown heavier as the pressure mounted. Mike had messaged her earlier that morning, reminding her of the timeline for the repayment. Claire sighed and typed her response, telling him she would find a way to pay the money he demanded. Once the message was sent, Claire took a deep breath and began to prepare for what came next. She made the decision to sell the house and contacted a few friends in real estate, hoping they could help speed up the process. After a few calls, they informed her that, given the current economic slowdown, the sale might take longer than anticipated. But Claire couldn't wait. The pressure from Mike was constant, threatening to break her down with each passing day. 3 days later, they found a buyer, but the offer was far from what she had hoped for. The buyer offered only half the price of what the house was valued at, a bitter pill to swallow. I don't have a choice, Claire muttered to herself as she looked at the offer. I have to sell it. She called the buyer back, accepting the offer with a heavy heart. The deal was done, and she quickly transferred the money to Mike. As soon as she did, she received a message from him, berating her for not paying enough. You still need to pay more, Claire. This isn't over, Mike's message read, his tone as cold as ever. Claire's stomach churned as she read the words. How much more does he want? She whispered angrily. This was supposed to be it, but Mike didn't relent. He continued to push her, making it clear that the remaining amount would need to be settled soon. Claire turned to Liam, her voice tinged with desperation. I don't know what to do, Liam. We've sold the house. We have no other way to pay him. Liam looked down, his face pale. He knew the situation had become dire. I'll sell my house, he said, his voice quiet but firm. If it's the only way to get him off our backs, I'll sell it. Claire's eyes widened. No, Liam. You can't. I can, Liam interrupted. I'll do whatever it takes to get us out of this mess. If we don't, we end up underwater with concrete blocks on our legs. With a resigned nod, Claire watched as Liam arranged for the sale. A day later, the deal was done. Liam had sold his house to Mike for the remaining amount, leaving them both with nothing. No home, no savings, no way out of the financial hole they had dug. The reality of their situation hit hard as they stood in the empty apartment, the echoes of their choices hanging in the air. Liam sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing his face in frustration. We've got nothing left, Claire. No house, no savings, nothing. Claire stood at the window, staring out blankly, feeling the weight of their loss. I don't know what we're going to do now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We figure it out, Liam said, though there was no conviction in his voice. We have to. Claire and Liam sat in their small, dimly lit apartment, the tension between them palpable. The weight of everything that had happened, the lies, the schemes, the con, was starting to suffocate them. They were both exhausted, their nerves frayed, but the spark of determination still burned in Claire's eyes. Liam, leaning against the kitchen counter, let out a heavy sigh. I don't know, Claire. This whole thing, it's spiraling out of control. What if we get caught? Claire's eyes narrowed, her jaw clenched with resolve. What if we don't? What if we let France get away with it? He's the one who set this whole thing up, Liam. He played us both. He took everything from us. Liam shifted uneasily, his gaze flickering to the floor. I get it, but kidnapping Emily? That's crossing a line we can't come back from. Claire stood up from the couch, walking towards him with purpose. You're right, we can't come back from it. But neither can France. He'll never think twice about doing this again, unless we show him the consequences. We have to make him pay for everything he's put us through. Liam hesitated, staring at Claire, torn between the growing anger that mirrored hers and the fear of what might happen if things went too far. I don't know, Claire. We don't have a choice, Claire replied firmly, her voice hardening with conviction. We do this, and it's over. He'll understand that we're not just pawns in his game anymore. He'll have to pay. Liam exhaled sharply, his eyes searching hers. All right then, let's do it. We'll make him pay. Claire nodded, a cold smile creeping across her face as they began to form their plan. The final steps to take down the man who had ruined their lives. They were committed now. Claire and Liam sat in the living room, a tense silence hanging in the air as they brainstormed their next move. Claire's eyes were cold, focused, while Liam fidgeted, clearly uneasy with the plan forming in front of him. I still don't like this, Claire, Liam muttered, running a hand through his hair. Kidnapping Emily? That's too much. What if things go south? We could end up in jail. Claire leaned forward, her hands clasped together. Look, Liam, we're not going to hurt her. This is just a way to make France pay for everything. He has to understand that we're serious. If we get caught, we'll just tell them I needed to see my daughter. There's nothing criminal about that. Liam looked at her, eyes wide with disbelief. You're kidding, right? A kidnapping charge doesn't just get swept away because you claim you needed to see your daughter. We'll be in deeper trouble than we're already in. Claire's gaze hardened. It's not kidnapping if we're just taking her to get her away from him. And once we do that, we'll have leverage. France will have no choice but to pay. He's the one who started this mess, and now it's time for him to clean it up. Liam looked at her, the tension in his body slowly giving way to resignation. I just don't want to end up in a worse position than we are now. But if you're sure this is the only way, then fine. We'll do it. Claire nodded sharply, her mind already racing with the next steps. We'll make it quick. In and out. And remember, if we get caught, we tell them exactly what I said. I was just trying to meet my daughter. We're not criminals, Liam. We're just parents trying to protect what's ours. Liam took a deep breath, still unsure but knowing there was no turning back now. All right, Claire. But if this blows up in our faces, you're going to be the one explaining it all. Claire gave a small, determined smile. Don't worry, Liam. It'll work. We'll make him pay. The plan was set, and the weight of their decision settled over them both. Neither of them could undo the path they were about to walk down. The dim lights of the rundown alley flickered as Claire and Liam pulled up to the abandoned factory. The air was thick with tension, the kind that crawls under your skin and makes every breath feel heavier than the last. The silence was almost deafening as they waited, parked near the entrance, the sound of their engine idling softly. Claire glanced at Liam, her expression unreadable. This is it. We can't mess this up. Liam nodded without saying a word. He was already looking at the factory's decaying walls, his mind likely spinning in the same frantic loops as hers. They had no choice now. The plan had to work. A few moments passed before a shadow moved from the far end of the factory yard. A tall figure emerged, walking with purposeful steps toward their car. He was dressed in dark clothes, his face partially obscured by the brim of a cap. As he approached, he held up a small envelope with the corner of a photograph peeking out. Claire rolled down the window, keeping her eyes locked on him. You have her? The man didn't waste time with pleasantries. He tossed the envelope into the car before stepping back. The girl's in there. Everything's as you asked. Liam quickly grabbed the envelope, tearing it open. Inside was a photo of Emily, unmistakable, even with her wide, frightened eyes. Claire could feel her stomach knot as she looked at it. This was the moment they had waited for, but it felt more wrong than ever. The man gave them a sharp, final nod. Money? Claire glanced at Liam. Without a word, he pulled out a stack of cash and handed it over to the man. The exchange was brief, but the look in the man's eyes lingered. He didn't seem like someone who had any qualms about his job, but the way he quickly turned on his heel suggested he had no interest in sticking around any longer. The next evening, they waited for the man at the same spot. Claire and Liam hurried out of the car, moving quickly toward the rusted, chained gates of the factory. Inside, in the back of an old van, was the figure they'd been waiting for. A woman was kneeling inside, her hands bound behind her back. A black mask covered her face, and her breathing was heavy, uneven, the result of fear or perhaps exhaustion. As they approached, Claire's heart thudded louder in her chest. Liam was the first to speak. His voice was low, controlled. Is it her? Emily? Claire couldn't see the girl's face, but the posture, the way she slumped forward, the uncertainty, it felt like Emily. They drove off, and soon the cold glow of the streetlight flickered above Claire as she stood near the abandoned factory, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. The tension in the air seemed to suffocate everything around her, every shadow in the dark corner of the yard feeling like it was watching her. Beside her, Liam's eyes darted between the girl in the back of the car and the street, his muscles tense with anxiety. Claire's heart hammered in her chest as she listened to the other line ring. Each ring seemed to stretch into eternity, building the suspense. She could feel the sweat on the back of her neck, the weight of the decision weighing heavily on her. She needed to act quickly. This moment had to work, or it would all fall apart. Finally, a voice crackled through the phone, low and controlled. Claire, France said, his tone thick with cold menace. I'm listening. Claire's fingers clenched tighter around the phone. I have the girl. I know you want her back, but it's going to cost you. France didn't respond immediately, and the silence on the other end made Claire's stomach churn. She could feel his calculating eyes on her, even though they were miles apart. He would know if she hesitated. He would know if she wasn't in control. I'm asking for $700,000, Claire continued, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her chest. That's the price. Pay up and I'll tell you where she is. Another stretch of silence followed. Claire's breath caught, waiting for his response. You think I'm just going to hand over that kind of money without proof? France's voice was colder now, tinged with skepticism. Claire exhaled slowly, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. You know I'm not playing games here. I'll send you proof when the money's in my hands. That's the deal. Liam shifted beside her, his gaze darting nervously to the car, as though he feared someone would appear from the shadows at any moment. Claire raised her hand to him, signaling him to stay quiet. They couldn't afford any slip-ups now. Finally, France spoke again, his voice low and threatening. 700,000? You'll get it. But I want the location now. Claire's pulse quickened. This was the moment, the line they couldn't cross back over. She could hear France's breath on the other end, waiting. She forced the words out, each syllable measured, deliberate. Meet me at the old mill on Riverside. Tomorrow night, at midnight. Don't be late. There was a sharp pause on the other end of the line, followed by a clipped response. I'll be there. Claire didn't say another word. She ended the call quickly, her hand shaking as the screen blinked out. She stood there, feeling the weight of the decision she'd just made settle over her like a thick fog. Liam turned to her, his voice a hoarse whisper. Do you think he'll show? Claire didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced down at the girl in the back seat, still silent and bound. A flash of guilt flickered in her chest, but she pushed it aside. He will, she said, her voice steady but cold. He'll show. He always does. The car's tires crunched on the gravel road as Claire and Liam's vehicle neared the rendezvous point. The mist from the early morning fog lingered in the air, creating an eerie atmosphere around them. The headlights illuminated the shadowy figure of France standing at the edge of a rundown barn, a large bag hanging from his hand. Claire leaned over to Liam, her voice a low whisper. This is it. No turning back now. Liam gave her a stiff nod, his jaw set in determination. We have the money. We make the exchange and we're out. Claire's grip tightened around the steering wheel. As they rolled to a stop in front of France, Liam shifted into park. The engine rumbled for a moment before falling silent. France didn't move at first, his silhouette tall and imposing in the dim light. The girl. Now. Claire opened her door, the cold air biting at her exposed skin. She reached into the back seat where a large, unmarked bag rested. With a swift motion, she and Liam pulled the girl out, her hands bound tightly in rope. France took a few steps forward, his gaze calculating. Let me see her face. Liam and Claire exchanged a glance. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of the moment almost suffocating. Claire hesitated for a moment before she grabbed the mask from the girl's face and slowly lifted it away. As the mask came off, France's eyes narrowed. He blinked, a frown spreading across his face. Who the hell is this? The girl's features were not those of Emily. Her blonde hair, though messy and tangled, was far darker than Emily's. Her face, though pale, was unfamiliar. She was someone else entirely. Claire's stomach dropped. She looked at Liam, who was frozen beside her, confusion written all over his face. France stepped back, his eyes darting between them. What game are you playing? Claire's mind raced. That's supposed to be Emily. Supposed to be? France growled, his voice rising with a dangerous edge. You've been lying to me? Liam quickly stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. There's been a mix-up. It's not what you think, France. This isn't what we... I don't care about your excuses. France's voice was cold, dead serious. I want Emily, or I'll walk away with nothing. The girl, still gagged, began to struggle, her eyes wide with fear. Claire could see the desperation in the stranger's eyes, but her attention was focused on France. Every nerve in her body was screaming at her, a sense of dread creeping down her spine. No, this isn't right, Claire whispered, her hands trembling. France's fingers clenched around the bag of money. His patience was wearing thin. You had better figure this out, or both of you will regret this. The silence hung heavy, the world holding its breath. Then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, the girl shifted slightly. Her muffled voice, though faint, broke the silence. I don't know who they are. The screech of tires cut through the tense silence of the night as headlights flooded the yard. Claire's eyes darted toward the sound, a cold shiver running down her spine. A black SUV skidded to a stop beside her car, and the door swung open with a loud thud. Mike stepped out first, his broad frame outlined by the headlights, his expression dark and filled with fury. Behind him, two of his goons pulled a third man roughly from the back seat. Claire's eyes narrowed as she recognized him, the same man who had supposedly brought them Emily. He was disheveled, his face bruised and bloodied, stumbling under the weight of his restraints. They paid me to do it. It was this woman and that man. He pointed at Claire and Liam. Mike didn't spare a glance at the man. His gaze was fixed solely on Claire. His voice was like ice, cutting through the cold night air. You screwed up big time, lady, he growled, each word sharp and deliberate. That is my daughter you've kidnapped. Claire's stomach dropped. Her eyes flickered nervously to Liam, who was standing beside her, equally stunned. She swallowed hard, trying to maintain some semblance of control, but her words came out shaky. I didn't mean to. I just wanted Emily. My daughter. I was going to ask France for money. Mike's eyes blazed with anger. You were going to kidnap your own daughter? And ask your ex-husband to pay you ransom? You've sunk to a level I didn't think possible, Claire. That's despicable. Beyond anything I've seen. His jaw clenched, his fists curling at his sides as he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. He glanced back at France, who had appeared from the shadows, watching the confrontation unfold. Mike's gaze flickered between them before returning to Claire. He didn't look surprised, but his expression was cold, calculating. You were going to use Emily to get money from him? You've crossed every line there is. I owe my life to that man. His friends are my friends, his enemies my enemies. Claire stood frozen, her heart racing. The words stung, but there was no time to defend herself. She felt her world unraveling before her eyes, the consequences of her actions crashing down on her. She couldn't find the words to explain, to make sense of the chaos she brought upon herself. Mike's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. You're pathetic, he spat, turning back to his men. Get both of them. Liam moved toward Claire instinctively, his body tensing, ready to defend her, but his face was pale, his mouth set in a grim line. They were surrounded now, the goons moving in, blocking any escape. Mike's cold eyes fixed on them both as his men closed in. Don't even think about running. This is over. You're done. The goons took a step forward, their hands reaching for Claire and Liam as Mike's words rang in the air. The darkness seemed to press in around them as they were caught, trapped with no way out. They quickly grabbed them and put them in the SUV. Mike's boots crunched on the gravel as he walked up to France, his gaze locked with the other man's, a storm of fury and cold calculation swirling in his eyes. The air was thick with tension, the two men standing in stark contrast to one another. Mike's raw, barely contained anger, and France's measured, controlled calm. Mike didn't waste any time, his voice low and harsh. I know you never wanted them dead, France, he began, his tone laced with venom. But now it's not just you. They crossed me, tried to kidnap my daughter, my flesh and blood. You understand that, right? France stood still, his jaw tightening at the mention of Mike's daughter. He didn't flinch, but the tension in his posture was unmistakable. His eyes flickered briefly toward Claire and Liam, the weight of the situation settling on him. He knew exactly what Mike was capable of, and it was clear from the way the goons were standing guard that Mike had made up his mind. Mike took a step closer, his voice dropping even lower, almost a growl. Besides my daughter, I've got a reputation to protect. You've got yours, I've got mine. But this isn't something I can just brush off. They came after my family, after my daughter. So, you better understand that there's no walking away from this. He paused, his eyes flashing with a deadly intensity. Now, I have to take care of this. France's expression remained stoic, but there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes as he processed Mike's words. He wasn't surprised, not really. He knew how Mike operated. Ruthless, cold, and unforgiving when it came to his family. He couldn't blame him for that. Raising both hands slowly, France finally spoke, his voice smooth and calm despite the storm around them. Agreed, he said, the word deliberate, carrying the weight of his own unspoken agreement. You have a reputation to protect, Mike. I get it. He paused, glancing back at Claire and Liam, then returning his gaze to Mike. And I have a daughter to protect. France's tone turned slightly colder, but it was clear he was thinking ahead. If they are set free, they will come after her again. I can't risk that. My daughter's safety is everything to me. He took a deep breath, his eyes hardening as the decision seemed to settle within him. He then looked directly at Mike, his voice steady, leaving no room for doubt. I leave it all in your hands. Mike's eyes narrowed, considering France's words. There was no going back now. 3 weeks later, the warm glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the trees as France and his daughter, Emily, walked along the quiet, serene path by the river. The gentle sound of water flowing over rocks filled the air, blending with the distant laughter of Emily and the panting of their dog, Wilbur. It had been a long journey, but Emily was finally on the road to recovery, her health slowly returning to normal after the harrowing events. France felt the weight in his chest begin to lift. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to relax and enjoy the peaceful moment with his daughter. As France turned his gaze toward Emily, a soft smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. The last 3 weeks had been a blessing, an escape from the chaos and darkness of the past, and he was determined to savor it. But his moment of peace was cut short as his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, frowning at the unfamiliar number. Reluctantly, he answered, stepping slightly away from Emily to give her some space. "France," he said, his voice calm but alert. On the other end of the line, a voice came through, crackling with excitement. "Hey, France. It's Joseph. Thanks a ton, man. I finally hit a home run with Melinda last night. I'm really thankful for you fixing me up with her. You're a real lifesaver." Joseph's voice was animated, full of enthusiasm. France could almost hear the grin in his words. France's lips tightened into a thin smile. He hadn't expected to hear from Joseph today, but he couldn't deny that it was good to know that things had gone well. Despite the past and everything that had happened, the deal he had made with Joseph had turned out to be worth it, after all. "Good to hear, Joseph," France replied coolly, his tone betraying little emotion. "Glad it worked out for you." Joseph laughed on the other end. "Man, you're a lifesaver. Seriously. I owe you one. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon." The line went silent as Joseph hung up, and France pocketed his phone. He turned back to Emily, her laughter echoing through the trees as she played with Wilbur. The dog came in and licked his master. "No one dares kick my dog and lives." Wilbur wagged his tail harder with that statement. Miles away, the boat rocked gently on the vast, open sea, the rhythmic clapping of the waves against the hull the only sound that pierced the heavy silence. Claire and Liam sat side by side, their eyes wide with fear and their hearts pounding in their chests. The weight of the concrete around their feet felt unbearable, the cold, unyielding substance pressing them down like a silent executioner. Their hands were bound tightly behind their backs, the ropes cutting into their skin, adding to the feeling of helplessness that gripped them. They could hardly move, trapped in their own bodies, unable to escape whatever fate awaited them. The tall man stood in front of them, his dark figure looming over them like a predator sizing up its prey. He said nothing at first, just watched them squirm, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. His eyes were cold, emotionless, and his presence seemed to suffocate the air around them. Claire swallowed hard, her lips dry and cracked. She glanced at Liam, his face pale, his eyes darting between the man and the endless horizon. There was no escape, no way out. "You were a mistake from the start," the tall man finally said, his voice low and cold, devoid of any empathy. "But now, well, now you're just a problem solved." Without another word, he moved toward them, the smile never leaving his face. He grabbed Claire by the arm, yanking her roughly to her feet, and then did the same to Liam. They both struggled, their hearts racing, but the weight of the concrete and the tight ropes around their wrists made it impossible to fight back. In a swift motion, the man shoved them both toward the edge of the boat. The cold wind hit them like a slap in the face, their bodies trembling from the realization of what was about to happen. "No, please," Claire gasped, panic seizing her chest. "Please, don't." But the man wasn't listening. He gripped the back of their shirts, and with a forceful push, he sent them both sprawling over the edge of the boat. The sudden rush of the sea hit them like a wall, and in an instant, they were plunging into the cold, dark water. As the water swallowed them whole, their bodies were immediately dragged down, the concrete around their feet dragging them deeper, faster. The pressure of the water pressed against their chests, the cold creeping into their bones. The sea seemed endless, an abyss they had no way of escaping. Claire's lungs burned, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps as she tried to fight against the pull of the ocean. But it was no use. The weight was too much, and with each passing second, the water filled her lungs, choking the air from her. Beside her, Liam struggled too, his face contorted in fear, but his efforts were futile. The weight of the concrete, the ropes, and the depth of the sea were too much to overcome. Within moments, everything began to blur. The world around them darkened, the pressure of the water intensifying. Their limbs felt heavier, their bodies growing weaker with each passing second. The coldness of the water seeped into their souls, and the terror that had once gripped them slowly faded into a numbing quiet. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it was all over. The sea claimed them, and the world above was left silent, the boat rocking gently, as though nothing had ever happened. The fish swam undisturbed, and the sea carried on as if it had never known the two who had just disappeared into its depths. Mike's reputation was intact and France's daughter was finally safe. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.